All right, you guys have been waiting for this. You've been asking for it. So let's open up a Monster Energy and do this in one take. Earlier this year, I put together a tutorial for the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K in order to help users of all levels with their questions and helping them along the way with this video, making a video manual that was easy to access for everyone. And it seems that a lot of you got a lot of needed information out of it. The comments and overall response in that video led me to put together yet another tutorial, this time about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. And if you went through the entire tutorial for the 4K, then a good chunk of this information may sound similar, but there are still plenty of differences between that and the 6K Pro. In addition, Blackmagic updated some information and changed up a few things in April 2021, and I'll be outlining those changes that they apply to the 6K Pro in this particular video, but some may apply to the 4K as well. I've broken all these sections into chapters that you can find the timestamps for in the description, as well as resources and other videos that will go into further detail. Feel free to skip around in the video if you need to jump ahead or if you need to go back and review anything. Before we get started, I do want to take a chance to invite you to be part of the Frame Voyager community by joining our Discord channel, where we have such awesome community and people from all over the world, all in different production environments, that all talk with each other about camera gears, Blackmagic stuff, Minecraft, fun things like that. So check that in the link below, and also subscribe to our channel as well, and consider becoming a member of our channel by hitting the join button and get early access to our content and a dedicated only members chat channel. Things like that help us to be able to do videos like this regularly. Now it's time to sit back, get a cup of coffee, or around here, a Monster, and get ready for an incredibly in-depth look at the Pocket 6K Pro camera, which I've memorized this script completely. Hardware and specs. To get us started, I figured it'd be best to cover some of the hardware and specifications of the Pocket 6K Pro. In this first section, I'll be taking a look at the camera's overall construction, plus some of the features and functions. I'm also going to go over the camera's media storage and power options. First off, we'll start with the build and ergonomics of the camera. To start, included in the box at purchase are the camera, a lens dust cap, a camera strap, a 30-watt power supply, along with a locking connector and international adapters and battery, a welcome booklet, an activation key for Davinci Resolve Studio, the standard editing software. The dimensions of the Pocket 6K Pro are 7.08 inches long by 4.41 inches high and 4.84 inches deep, weighing 2.73 pounds. This makes the naked camera outright of the box the largest and heaviest of the family of Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. The larger body is there to house some of the additional features that only the 6K Pro has, but it is pretty negligible as far as grip and feel is concerned. However, the slightly increased weight may be more important for some of you to help to lug around more equipment than just the camera, or help you to balance the camera a little bit more. Sometimes people like a little bit more weight, and a little bit more weight in a camera can be a good thing to reduce things like micro jitters. But at the end of the day, is it going to do that much? That's up to you. Just like the rest of the family, the body of the Pocket 6K Pro is constructed from carbon fiber. For the environmental specifications, the operating temperature of the camera itself runs from 0 to 40 degrees Celsius, 32 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. When stored, the room temperature should be between -20 to 45 degrees Celsius, -4 to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. And the relative humidity in the environment the camera is being used in should be no more than 90%. When it comes to ergonomics, the camera has a hand grip which is located on the right-hand side of the camera if you're looking at the touchscreen. This, of course, is very helpful with the one-hand camera holding and direct access to the record and still button. If you use the still button on this camera. The grip is also covered in different triggers and buttons that give immediate access to a lot of standard settings and functions, and some that you can program yourself. For those of you looking for more places to grip the camera, Blackmagic sells a battery pack. Not only does this give you extra juice, but it also has additional built-in grips for more stable handheld use. And the Pocket 6K Pro actually has a specific one they built for this one that you can use on this camera and keep your internal battery inside with the camera grip battery. It's pretty cool. Moving on to the touchscreen. The most useful feature of the entire Pocket Cinema camera line is the 5-inch LCD touchscreen. This touchscreen allows you to manipulate all the standard functions that you would find with any camera. That's obviously not all. You can change and update nearly every setting you can think of using the touchscreen, along with getting a more accurate focus and framing for your shots. There will be a ton more details about all of these settings and features throughout this tutorial, and especially with this new updated screen that Blackmagic put into the 6K Pro with its, as we call it, the tilty screen, and increased brightness of 1500 nits, which is great for when you're filming outside. Let's talk about the Super 35 EF mount and full frame sensor. The Pocket 6K Pro has a Super 35mm size sensor and an EF lens mount. The EF mount has full electronics, so Canon EF lenses can communicate with the camera for focus and iris control. You can use lenses with built-in stabilization on top of autofocus and auto exposure with compatible lenses. Now, the autofocus I'm talking about is only a punch-in autofocus and is not continuous. And the image stabilizer, or IS, can be used by setting the stabilizer switch to on to enable image stabilization on your camera with lenses that have IS natively built in. And we'll show you how to do that here in a little bit. And when we're talking about IS, we're talking about the native IS inside of a lens and not the camera itself, as the camera does not have native internal stabilization built in. The EF mount, while simpler, will expand the number of possible lenses that you can use for your shot. As with everything, how effective this will be will depend on your personal needs. So let's get into a little bit more of the specifics of the 6K sensor. It has a Super 35mm sensor, or a 23.10mm by 12.99mm. The Super 35, which this is based off of, which is originally known as Super Scope 235, is actually a motion picture film format that uses exactly the same film stock as a standard 35mm film, but puts a larger image frame on that stock by using the space normally reserved for the optical analog soundtrack. Super 35mm and large formats are really the standard for sensor sizes in cinematography today. With this, the Super 35mm sensor has a crop factor of 1.5 compared to a full frame camera. And this is different from the Pocket 4K system, which has a micro four thirds system, which gave you about a crop factor of 2. So you do get a little bit more of a view on your footage. So does this mean that if you film at 35mm and in turn turning into a 52mm lens because it has that 1.5 crop factor? In a sense, yes and no. And this is something that's important to know if you're beginning with photography. The lens is still functioning as a 35mm lens, but the sensor is capturing a smaller part of what the lens is still seeing. So if you were to film this with a full frame sensor, you would have a much wider view because it's able to capture more of what the lens is seeing. But it doesn't affect the focal length or change what the lens is in general. It just narrows what you can see on that lens. And it can be helpful to think about it when you're talking about f-stop, because it doesn't fully do this. Your f-stop will always be 2.8 according to the lens, but it does reduce your depth of field. You know, say you're at an f-stop of 4.0, you're actually more of an f-stop of 6. You're not actually at an f-stop of 6. This is mostly explained in some other videos, and we're not going to really get into the details of what I'm talking about here. I've added a link below to kind of give you an explanation about focal length and different sensors and why there's a myth surrounding how it actually works. And it's not what a lot of people say it is. So be sure to check that out. It's very good information to know when talking about terminology and understanding what your lenses are doing on different sensors. Next, we're going to go on to frame rate and resolution. We're going to run through the different resolutions and their associated maximum frame rates. While this tutorial is for the Pocket 6K Pro, this particular information is going to be same for all of you regular 6K users out there. So it's important to note here that the max frame rate may be different for each resolution and codec due to the sensor scan. Lots of numbers coming your way, so pay close attention. 6K has a resolution of 6144 by 3456. The only codec you can use here is the Blackmagic RAW, which has a full sensor scan and max frame rate of 50 frames per second. 6K 2.4 by 1 has a resolution of 6144 by 2560 with a window sensor scan and maximum frame rate of 60. This is also Blackmagic RAW only. 5.7K 17 by 9 is also only used on Blackmagic RAW. With a resolution of 5744 by 3024, it has a window sensor scan and a max frame rate of 60 frames per second. 4K DCI has a resolution of 4096 by 2160, and this can be used on all codecs: Blackmagic RAW, ProRes 422, ProRes 422 HQ, LT, and Proxy, and has a max frame rate of 60 frames per second. Blackmagic RAW does window sensor scans, while all versions of the ProRes are scaled from 5.7K. Ultra HD has a resolution of 3840 by 2160. The only codec used here is ProRes, which can either be scaled from full with a max frame rate of 50 frames per second, or scaled from 5.7K with a max frame rate of 60 frames per second. 3.7K anamorphic resolution is 3728 by 3104 and only runs with Blackmagic RAW and has a window sensor scan and max frame rate of 60 frames per second. 2.8K 17:9 is also only for Blackmagic RAW and is a window scan. The resolution here is a 2868 by 1512 and has a max frame rate of 120 frames per second. HD on the 6K Pro only works with ProRes with a resolution of 1920 by 1080. As far as sensor scan and frame rate is concerned, scaled from full has a max of 50, scaled from 5.7K's max is 60 frames per second, and scaled from 2.7K has a max of 120 frames per second. When it comes to the type of data storage that can be used on the Pocket 6K Pro, you have three different options: SD cards, CFast cards, and USB-C flash disks. I'm going to do a quick overview of each of these for you. Number one, SD. The 6K Pro uses both UHS-1 and UHS-2 type SD cards. And what's the difference? Well, UHS-1 allows for storing all compressed video formats in HD, while UHS-2 allows you to record Blackmagic RAW as well as Ultra HD content in ProRes. The trade-off here is that UHS-2 SD cards tend to be more costly than UHS-1. Obviously, SDs are honestly the most affordable of the different storage options and definitely the easiest way to get your hands on due to how many different things tend to use them. They're great for storing and loading LUTs and presets and are fantastic if you're recording for long durations and or don't require high resolution files. Per Blackmagic's suggestions, if you're shooting in 4K DCI or Ultra HD, to use UHS-2 cards. For anything else, then UHS-1 is perfectly acceptable. And of course, the faster the speed of your card, the better it will be overall. And now, if you're looking for high resolutions and frame rates while recording, SD is probably not the best choice of storage since the speeds and capacities that are available are really not sufficient when you start getting to higher resolution of this camera, but it's still an option and it does play a role if that's something that you're looking for and to have that functionality. I personally don't love SD cards. I've had less problems and less formatting problems and less cards break on me when I'm using SSD cards than I have SD cards. So there is that. As far as the CFast cards are concerned, their overall functionality is not too dissimilar from SD cards. So if you already know how to use those, then you're really ahead of the game. The CFast 2.0 cards can support higher data rates, making them great for recording in 4K and HD with high frame rates. It's very important to note here to make sure that you carefully check out the specs of the CFast cards you're using or thinking of purchasing if you're planning on working with high data rate video. This is because when it comes to CFast cards, they can vary in read and write speed. USB-C solid-state drives. These are external hard drives that use flash memory. Because they are larger than CFast and SD, they have to be mounted to the outside of the camera and are connected via the USB-C port on the left side of your camera. Unlike with SD cards, the number of solid-state drive models that are compatible with the Blackmagic cameras tends to be a lot smaller. On top of that, knowing the ones that remain compatible over time tends to be a moving target. Blackmagic does keep an up-to-date list of which ones are the most compatible at this website right here, which we've linked in the description below. There are some modes that solid-state cards cannot record on with this specific camera, especially when you get into 6K and Q0, but honestly, 6K Q0 at 50 frames per second, I don't know what you need that for that footage anyways, and we'll get into what Q0 and higher bitrate is, but like, I'm not even sure that there's a card that's has the read-write speed to even be able to capture that footage in the first place. And if you would like to, there is a friend of mine, another camera channel, did an entire video on the cards on the solid-state drives he uses, which are SanDisk hard drives that are different than the ones that I use, which are Samsung T5 cards. He asked me to come in the video and explain my side with the T5 cards while he explains his SanDisk cards. So if you're interested in seeing two different variations of solid-state drives that work with the Pocket 6K Pro, be sure to check out that video. It's in the description below. Using all three styles of storage isn't quite as simple as plug and play, but the formatting process is extremely easy and can be done right on the camera itself. I'm going to run through the process for you step by step. The first thing you're going to do is either insert or mount your storage accordingly. If you went with either SD or CFast cards, there are two individual ports for each style behind the closed door in the hand grip on the right side of the camera. If you went with solid state drives, then you will connect that to the USB-C port on the left side of the camera, then mount the SSD itself to the top. Looking at your touchscreen, tap the storage indicator that shows up at the bottom of the screen to enter the storage manager. At the bottom of the screen, you should see three different options to choose from. The first two from left to right will always read exit and format CFast card accordingly. The third option will either read format SD card or format drive, depending on if you're using an SD or a USB-C flash disk. The reason for this is because both SD and solid state drives need to occupy the same space in the camera's operating system. So this means that when you plug the storage into the USB-C drive, the functions for SD are auto-disabled. If you want to manually change your reel number in this process, tap Edit Reel Number, enter the reel number you want, then tap Update. You should have two formatting options here for OS X Extended, which is strictly for Mac users, and exFAT, which can be used for both Mac and PC. Keep in mind that if you do use Mac and choose exFAT, that one does not allow for journaling. You are provided with an opportunity to quickly review these settings to make sure that they are right, and I would definitely suggest taking an extra couple seconds here to scan through everything real quick. If you need to change, tap cancel and start over. Otherwise, you can continue from here, hold down the format button for 3 seconds, and you will see right away if your formatting was successful or not. Next section, inputs and outputs. In the 6K Pro, something you definitely will not be lacking in is the ports for all of your media, equipment, and connections. Some of these you're going to use constantly, while others you may never touch, depending on your needs. So let's get into this, and most of you should know what these are, but I'm going to go through the specs of each and kind of explain a couple of things with each of them. So let's go. Let's start with the HDMI port. The 6K Pro contains a full-sized HDMI port that supports 10-bit, forward 2:2, 1080p HD video, plus support for HDR and 2 channels of embedded audio. One of the most common uses for the HDMI port is to connect an external monitor for better viewing of your shot without all the indicators that tend to clutter up the LCD touchscreen. Some also use this port regularly to attach an ATEM switcher to give better remote access to the functions and settings. One thing to make sure that you guys are aware of is an important issue with HDMI burnout. It can be caused by simple things as using one power source for both your camera and external monitor, or just using cheap aftermarket HDMI cords. While this does not kill your whole camera, you'll be forced to pay out of pocket to get the port fixed, since this is not something covered under the warranty. I did a video about this very issue with the Pocket 4K, but all that same information applies for the Pocket 6K Pro. Go check it out when you're done here, and always be careful when you're buying third-party power cables, and be careful when you're looping power to your camera and to your monitor at the same time, and make sure that the setting requirements are correct, because the last thing you want to do is burn out the board on your camera, because then you're done. Moving on to Mini XLR. The Mini XLR ports are also located on the left side and are therefore used with external microphones that require phantom power. While the 6K and 4K models only have one Mini XLR port, 6K Pro owners get 2. And be mindful when choosing mic cords for your Blackmagic cameras, as the Mini XLR connectors are smaller than standard XLRs. In some instances, an adapter may be required, and I've linked below to the adapters I use for the camera that have worked well for me. The best microphones to use here are going to be shotgun and boom mics, because it's harder to get a clear signal with more dynamic styles, but you can also attach, per usual, like anything like even wireless lapel mics. The 3.5mm jack has a couple of pretty handy uses. To start, it's a great secondary option for connecting microphones to your camera. The downside is the input cannot run phantom power, so whatever microphone you use needs to have its own power supply, wired or wireless. This is also where you can set up your timecode devices. This method of setting up the timecode via the 3.5mm jack is what is known as JamSync. I have a video available on my channel that goes over timecode setup in more detail, so make sure to go check out that one when you're done here. Moving on to the headphone jack. Anyone who has used any sort of audio equipment at this point in the last 40 plus years, and honestly longer, probably is familiar with that standard headphone jack. The headphone jack on the Pocket 6K Pro works exactly the same So not much to cover here. Just make sure you're careful when plugging in whatever headphones or monitor system you're going to be using, since this jack and the 3.5mm jack are right next to each other, so it's easy to mix them up sometimes if you're not paying attention on a shoot, but I think you guys got that. Internal microphones. Not unlike the rest of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera family, the 6K Pro has internal microphones built right into the camera body, located on either side of the lens. I'm pretty sure I don't really need to explain a microphone to any of you, but if you want to know more about the settings for the mics, there will be a whole section dedicated to that later on in this tutorial. Feel free to either hang out until we get there or skip ahead. Next, the power input. Using the DC input, you can fully power the camera and trickle charge your battery simultaneously. Since the internal battery in the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera are just okay, and some of you have some pretty crazy rigs, you may need to get or create custom power devices and setups. Be careful though, because this is something that can mess up your camera beyond repair if done incorrectly. As far as how to avoid any issues, let's go over a couple recommendations and solid numbers to help you out. The battery input is rated from 6.2 volts to 10 volts max. The DC input is rated from 10.8 volts to 20 volts max. And while on standby and not actively charging the battery, the camera requires 16 watts. While actively charging the battery, the camera requires 30 watts. And when you're powering on your camera with a custom power source, Blackmagic recommends that you remove the battery first. When recording the external media with an active lens, full screen brightness, full tally brightness, and high frame rates while not charging the battery, Blackmagic specifically states that 26 watts is required for the Pocket 6K Pro. Moving on to the USB-C port. As mentioned in a previous section, the USB-C can be used for connecting an external flash disk or solid-state drive to your camera. That isn't this port's only use though. The USB-C is used to update your camera's software when required. Just connect to your camera via the USB-C input and run your camera's update application. Another cool use for this port is while your camera is powered off, you can use this input to recharge the battery from an external source such as a battery pack. And this is pretty slow. I would recommend doing it. It's an option. I've never done it, but I wanted to let you guys know that you can power it from that USB-C. It has to be turned off and you can power the battery pack or you can charge the battery inside. So if you're on a camping trip or something, you don't have an option, take that. But I think most of you will find out that you'll probably just need V-mount batteries, but we'll get into that later. Now we've moved on to the next section. Oh. In this next section, I'm going to be going over interfaces and menus. I can imagine this is the part of the video that's going to interest everyone the most, as this is really where you're going to learn how to use your Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K Pro. And I'll be diving into the camera's various interfaces, buttons, and menus for you to get the best use of your camera. And this is honestly, when it comes down to it, something that you really got to know when it comes to a camera is like what each setting does, how it works. So when you're on a shoot, when you're somewhere and you need to get something, and you just know where it is intuitively and you know how to find it and you know what it does. So feel free to skip along in this section if you're looking for specific parts, or rewind and go back over this again, or feel free to comment below too if you have any questions about this. Buttons and lights. What we're going to start with is buttons and lights. Pretty much all modern cameras at this point have buttons and indicators bedazzled all over the body. Bedazzled, I think that's the thing, right? I don't even know what I'm doing. They all have different functions and it can be hard to figure out where the function you need is without a ton of guesswork. I'm going to do a quick run through of these with the hopes of at least giving everyone watching a head start. Starting off, there are two different external record buttons. One at the top of the hand grip where you would normally find it on any handheld camera this shape, and the other to the upper left of the lens if you're facing the front of the camera. Next to the standard record is where you will also find the still button with the manual setting wheel located directly under those. Also on the front of the camera is the tally record indicator on the opposite side of the lens from the secondary record button. Moving to the top of the camera, you will find all in a row on the hand grip the ISO, shutter, and white balance buttons. Closer to the center top is where you will find the power switch with the battery status LED to the immediate right of that. Continuing the same direction, you will find the function buttons, which have different uses depending on how you choose to have them set up. But starting off, they generally have a LUT option and false color and, gosh, I actually can't remember. What is it? Right there on the screen. Power of editing. Now finally to the back side of the camera, where you'll notice the buttons lined up on the right and broken up into two sections. The top section is where you will find the iris and focus buttons. In the next section from the top to bottom is where you will find the HFR, focus zoom, menu, and play buttons. Above the right-hand corner of the LCD touchscreen are the buttons for the ND filter, which is only available on the 6K Pro. Touchscreen controls. The touch and gesture interface on the 5-inch LCD touchscreen is not only intuitive, but it's also fast and pretty fun to play around with, let's be honest. The improved efficiency it creates while used to adjust settings on the fly really is one of the best, not only just on the Pocket 6K Pro, but honestly on any Blackmagic camera in general. It's the best selling point. It's such an intuitive system. Let's take a deep dive into what this touchscreen can do for you. LCD monitor, let's start with that. The LCD monitor settings allow you to switch and adjust the monitoring features on your camera. To access these options, tap the monitor icon in the upper left hand of the screen. You're going to get a bar at the bottom of the screen with 6 different icons, which represents the different LCD monitor options. In order from left to right, you have zebra, focus assist, frame guides, grids, safe area guides, and false color. Let's start with zebra first. The purpose of zebra settings is to help with correcting exposure. When active, this places a striped pattern over areas of the image that are over a threshold, then you would be able to see yourself. To access this, tap the first monitor option icon, then just tap the toggle right under that zebra icon to turn it on and off. To the right of that toggle, you will see a slider. This is to set the exposure level that you want. So just move your finger back and forth on the slider to set this. Your exposure level can be set anywhere from 75 to 100% in increments of 5. Focus Assist has 3 separate settings, low, medium, and high. Like any good microwave. That was dumb. Which is chosen based on what you're shooting. For example, when shooting people, you may need to have a focus assist set on high to help smooth out the edges of their face. Another great example is shooting foliage. Unless you're doing close-in shots of a single leaf, setting your focus assist to low will possibly work out the best. To use this, just tap on the second icon and toggle it on in the on position. And as I like to have focus peaking on high all the time. A lot of other people, some people do, some people don't. Depends on the way you like to film. Some people swear by filming and focusing manually without it. I like having on. I have other friends that don't have it on, and I always know when they use my cameras because they'll be like, why is it not focusing? Because I don't see the red lines. So do what works for you, do what you're comfortable with, and then if you need to work off of it another way, just change it. So it's good to know this. Frame guides assist with setting the aspect ratio of your shoot by changing the appearance of the frame guides on your LCD monitor. It is the third icon, and once this is toggled on, you can choose the frame guide you need by dragging your finger on the slider from left to right. There are more options for frame guides than there are for other LCD monitor settings, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown on these here. Are you guys ready for some numbers? 2, 35, and 1. 239 and 1 and 240 and 1 are broad widescreen aspect ratios mainly compatible with anamorphic or flat widescreen cinema. 2:1 is an aspect ratio slightly wider than 16:9, but less than 2:35:31. 1:85:1 is commonly a flat widescreen aspect ratio wider than HDTV 178:1, but not as wide as 2:39:1. 16:9 also shows 1:78:1 ratio that's compatible with 16:9 TVs and monitors. This is mainly used for HD broadcasting online videos and more recently Ultra HD broadcasting. 14:9 is mostly used by TV broadcasts so that this aspect ratio can display on both 16:9 and 4:3 television for those of you that still have your parents' old antenna TV set. 4:3 is the ratio most compatible for SD televisions and also helps frame while using 2x anamorphic adapters. 1:1 is the only perfect square aspect ratio that is popular now on social media. 4:5 is the only vertical aspect ratio and works best for portraits and smartphone viewing. Custom frame guides is pretty self-explanatory and it is good for all of those extra shots that don't work with the standard aspect ratios. Are you filming something for a football team that has to go on a massive screen? This can help you to see what's actually in that weird aspect ratio. So have fun with that. Next, we're moving on to grids. The fourth icon is for grids, which are overlays meant to help with the image composition. There are 4 different grid options: rules of third, horizon, crosshair, or dot. In the third setting, the display shows a grid consisting of 2 perpendicular lines in each of the third image, and not only does this help you compose your shots, but thirds also help maintain a consistent framing from shot to shot. When in horizon, the meter tells you whether your camera is rolled left or right or tilted up or down. This is really useful for balancing the camera tilt while on a gimbal. It also helps you make sure that your shooting horizon is level while doing handheld shots. And the horizon meter is something interesting, and if you guys haven't seen the video yet, check out my, I don't actually remember what I called it, but it's right here. It's the Black Magic Secret Society secret feature that you didn't know about that's hidden in the camera that they wouldn't tell you about, that I pretended like I broke into their facility and did. It was really dumb, but you should check it out because it's very interesting for something in the future about gyroscopic data within it. So if that piques your interest, go check it out. In the description, I've linked it. Per usual, Crosshair has similar functionality to thirds in that it helps with the shot composition and helps if you need to center a subject in the frame. The difference between this and thirds is that Crosshair only has 2 lines that intersect in the middle of the screen. Dot helps you center your shot on a subject much in the same way as Crosshair. The main difference is right in the name. Instead of 2 lines that intersect, a dot is placed in the center of the frame. Safe Area Guides. Safe Area Guides is used to help you frame your shots by keeping the most important parts of your shots inside of the safe area. Best use here is for broadcast production scenarios because it can keep you from having important items in your shot cropped out for television. This will also help frame out shots that will have tickers or banners added in post-production so that can appear without blocking important items or people. This is also used to assist with framing during shooting so you know what can be visible after the shot is stabilized in post-production. Tap the 5th icon to toggle on. Then you can set your safe area guides by either using the slide bar, or you can use the arrows that appear on either side of the shown percentage to get the most accurate framing. Now we're moving on to false color, my favorite feature. And if you want to find out more about this, as we're not going to go incredibly into depth in this, check out our video on it in the link below. We don't know from the Pocket 4K and Pocket 6K Pro, and there's some new things within the updates. The false color setting overlays different colors onto your image, which represent exposure values for different elements in your footage. These different colors represent different exposure elements that will give you different information about your shot. Blues and purples can tell you if you have a loss of detail, while yellow and red can indicate places of overexposure. Gray, pink, and green show the areas where exposure is at its best. You should be able to see how this chart works to the left of your screen when you turn on your false color in the new 7.3 Blackmagic update. They added this false color chart for a quick reference of what each color means. And let's go through real quick and explain. BDL, which is everything in purple, means you have black detail loss, meaning you have absolutely no details at all in the purple parts of your exposure, and you will not be able to recover it in post. NBDL is near black detail loss and is everything lights up blue or dark gray. This shows you the parts of your footage that are close to losing all detail if you expose down any further. 18% MG is middle gray, and this is represented with color green and light gray. Now, for those of you wondering about middle gray is perceptually about halfway between black and white on the lightness scale. In photography and printing, it is typically defined as 18% reflectance in visible light. MG plus 1 is one stop over middle gray, and this is represented by pink to almost near white colors. Now, essentially adding one stop of light to your image means that you increase its brightness by 100%. And another way to put this is that you double the amount of light your image has. 80% WC is near white clipping. This is represented by yellow and is your warning that if you expose your image any higher, you will lose your details in the highlights, essentially making it just white. 95% WC is white clipping. This is represented by red and is letting you know that you're pretty much blowing out and losing all the details in your image. And we have covered this in other videos like I've talked about more extensively, so be sure to check that out in the link below. Moving on to ND filters, as mentioned in the previous section of the Pocket 6K Pro, has an exclusive feature, the ND or neutral density filters. This will allow you to reduce the amount of light reaching the sensor by a preset number of exposure stops. This in turn means that you'll be able to shoot at wide apertures, giving you a shallow depth of field in bright conditions such as outdoors on a sunny day. I'll get into how to adjust the ND filters in the settings section. When active, the indicator for the ND filter will appear directly underneath the monitor icon. If you're already familiar with using ND filters, then you will probably already know what in terms you want for each of your filters. As needed, you can identify the ND filter number, amount of stops in light reduction, or fraction representing the amount of light reducers for the filters. Frames per second, located in the upper right-hand corner of your touchscreen to the right of the monitor icon, is where you'll find the frames per second setting. Tap on the icon to change both the project and sensor frame rate using the slider or the left to right arrows that appear on either side of the frame rate counter. The project frame rate is 6K Pro's frame rate, while a recording end should be set to work best with your post-production workflow. The sensor frame rate sets how many frames from the sensor are recorded by the second and affects how fast or slow your playback will be. For a natural playback speed, your sensor and project frame rates are matched by default. Sometimes you will need to set your sensor frame rate independently though. This is where off-speed frame rates come into play. To turn this off and on, just use the toggle that appears feature in the lower left-hand corner while the FPS menu is visible. This setting can give you some interesting effects which are useful depending on the type of project you have. Keep in mind that using off-speed frame rate makes your audio and video out of sync. And this essentially, for those of you who've not used off-speed recording before, essentially converts something like this. You can have it, and we'll show you how to set this up in the settings internally later on. But essentially, if you have 60 frames per second and 24 frames per second, and your project frame rate is 24 frames per second, you can hit an HFR button and it'll convert 60 frames back down to 24, automatically making it slow motion. It's pretty cool, pretty easy feature. And if we have more content on that and a full video on that below here in the description if you want to check that out. Moving on to the shutter. The shutter is what allows light to come through your camera at particular intervals. To change your shutter settings, just tap on the shutter indicator, which is located directly to the right of the FPS indicator. This is where you can manipulate both shutter speed and shutter angle. Shutter speed determines how long your shutter will remain open to accept light into the lens, and this should be adjusted to match your frame rate appropriately using the rule of 180, meaning having your shutter speed set to double your frame rate. For example, if you're recording at 24 frames per second, then your shutter speed should be at 1/48 of a second. Shutter angle serves pretty much the same purpose, just the parameters are a bit different. Think of it the same way you would think of the difference between the metric and imperial measurement system. The real difference between the two is that when using shutter speed and shooting at varying frame rates, you have to manually change the speed for each frame rate. While using shutter angle, this is done automatically for you, giving you a bit more independence when shooting. If you want to use flicker free, tap on the shown shutter values while in the shutter settings. Shutter Auto adjusts the shutter values in order to maintain constant exposure while keeping the iris aperture consistent. This is best for maintaining a fixed depth of field. Shutter plus iris is what maintains correct exposure levels by adjusting the shutter first, aperture second. This is great if you reach the minimum or maximum shutter values but still can't maintain exposure because it adjusts the aperture to keep exposure consistent. Iris plus shutter is pretty much the reverse. It adjusts aperture, then shutter value. Then if you reach that minimum or maximum aperture and still can't maintain your exposure, the shutter value is what gets adjusted to keep exposure consistent. Iris. The iris setting is used to change the aperture of whatever lens you have attached. The setting also allows you to configure iris-based auto exposure modes. Access to the iris settings by either using the external iris button or the tap on the iris indicator located on the touchscreen directly to the right of the shutter indicator. The duration displays the timecode counter on your touchscreen. Its purpose is not only to monitor the timecode during recording and playback, but also to check the duration of your individual clips. Duration display, along with all other timecodes, is at the middle top of your touchscreen and shows as the time sequence in the format hours, minutes, second frames. The timecode can be used for device time sync, faster editing, and note-taking. You can switch back and forth between the time of day, timecode, and the clip duration by tapping on your touchscreen right where the timecode is displayed. Blackmagic Design currently has available the ATEM Mini, which is a multi-function switcher, giving you a ton of different broadcasting production options for multi-camera and more complicated equipment setups. For this particular setting, the ATEM Mini auto-syncs the timecode on your cameras, removing the majority, if not all, of the guesswork. Depending on how you have everything set up, you may have one of four possible indicators next to the duration display. A W to the left of the duration display means your camera is using windowed sensor mode. TC appears to the right if you're showing the regular timecode. When connecting to an external device via the 3.5mm jack for timecode, then EXT appears next to the right. If your camera is running an internal timecode that has been jam synced, then INT will appear to the right of the duration display. ISO. The ISO indicator appears to the right of the duration display area. Access to the ISO to settings is available by either tapping the icon on the touchscreen or using the external ISO button. ISO is a secondary sensor that can be used to adjust varying light conditions to help with exposure. In the settings, the ISO can be adjusted using the arrows or slide bar. The Pocket 6K Pro comes with a dual native ISO, meaning that the sensor is built in to work both in low and bright light conditions. Adjusting your ISO as lighting conditions change causes the dual native ISO to work its magic, making sure all of your footage is clean with as much minimal noise as possible. And this is something that we've covered extensively in other videos, which you can check out in the link below. This is really a critical component of the camera to get correct, as it really does affect your footage. Let's briefly discuss this. Dynamic range, for those of you who do not know, is the camera's ability to capture stops of light above and below middle gray. Native ISO is the baseline setting your camera is set at to achieve the most detail out of your image. Going above or below this setting will digitally unamplify or amplify the sensor's sensitivity to light it is capturing. So these are levels that you are generally advised to stay at when filming to get best results with over-amplifying or under-amplifying can cause. The Pocket 6K Pro is said to have 13 stops of dynamic range, peaking at about 13.4 stops at 400 ISO and peaking at 12.1 stops in the secondary 3200 native ISO. This is where you have to start thinking differently about how you film with this camera versus that like a DSLR or mirrorless camera equivalents that rarely use dual native ISO systems. Each time you adjust your ISO levels, the dynamic range value shifts where they are at. Meaning that if you're at your native ISO 400, you have 5.9 stops above middle gray and 7.5 stops below. This means for this ISO, you have slightly more dynamic range in the shadows or simply the darker areas of your footage. Now, if you went all the way back to 100 ISO, you only have 3.9 stops above middle gray, but 9.5 below, meaning that oddly enough, you have very little range in the highlights of your image. If you shoot at 100 ISO, you actually would have better success filming at 1000 ISO in direct sunlight, since it has 7.3 stops above middle gray. If you properly expose for your shot, you'll be getting much more details in the highlights than at 100. As for settings, when it comes down to it, you should really stick to early on. I would suggest 400 ISO and only bumping to 3200 ISO when absolutely necessary to get the correct amount of exposure. If you want to learn more about this and get into this in detailed subject, check out our video on it below to get more information on this. Oh my gosh, guys, if you've made it this far, God bless you. Oh my gosh, I had to get some tea, even though this is the Voyager fuel, as we like to call it on our Discord channel. It does not help the vocal cords, does it? Let's talk about white balance. The white balance setting is used to adjust the colors that light naturally gives off to keep the whites in your footage as white as possible. To access white balance, you once again have two options. The first is the white balance button located at the top of the body of the camera. The other is by tapping the white balance indicator on the touchscreen, which is to the immediate right of the ISO indicator. This will give you the slider bar and arrows options to adjust the settings at the bottom of the screen. This will also give you the icons for the different white balance presets. Before getting into those, I wanted to talk about another feature first. The camera comes with a feature to have your white balance set automatically for the duration of your shot. That is auto white balance button. To set this up, tap on the auto white balance button in the lower right of the screen. Then a box will appear in the center screen with the options cancel and update white balance below it. Hold a neutral white card or piece of paper in front of the camera so the box is filled and tap Update White Balance. To use this after it's set, press the white balance button on the outside of the camera and hold it down, and the same box will appear and automatically adjust your white balance setting based on what's in that box. As I've mentioned before, there are 5 white balance presets that you can choose from depending on each lighting condition. Each of these presets is presented by an individual icon in the settings screen. First from left to right is bright sunlight, which has a setting of 5600K. Then there are incandescent bulbs, which sit at 3200K. Next are fluorescent bulbs at 4000K, followed by mixed lighting at 4500K. Last, there is a cloud, which has a setting of 6500K. But wait, there's more. Take a look at the number and the arrows set to the right of the slide bar. This is the tint, and it doesn't do anything too dramatic. Well, I guess it is dramatic if you do it too far. It only has a range of -50 to +50, and the purpose of the tint is to dial in the perfect color balance of the image when it comes to magentas and the greens. So use carefully. I guess it is a little dramatic. Power. It's like a tip of C. The last icon on the far right of the top row on the touchscreen is the power indicator, which I guess is important. I mean, you wouldn't be able to see it. Would you be able to see the power indicator without power? Probably not. So if it's dead, I don't know where that joke's going. Well, it looks like the same type of power indicator that you would find on most electronic devices. It has a few different statuses that vary as much as the type of power options you have at your disposal. AC means that your camera is plugged into its main power source. AC charging means your camera is plugged into its main source and simultaneously charging an external battery, such as the Blackmagic battery grip. Percentage will show when your camera is running off external battery power, and the indicator will turn red at 20% or lower. Battery bars is the indicator for your internal battery when not plugged in. This will also turn red at 20% or lower. Battery grip bars show two stacked battery icons with their own individual charge. This one is only visible when you're using the Blackmagic battery grip. Power source voltage indicates the voltage the camera is receiving from the battery or through the DC power on a plug pack, D-tap cable, or other power sources. Let's move on to LUT indicators. While using a LUT as a preview tool, the icon will be visible on your touchscreen. It's located directly under the monitor icon and is only visible when there is an active LUT. Histogram. The bottom left of your camera touchscreen is where you will find the amazing histogram, which shows the tonal distribution of the image separated into individual red, green, and blue channels. If your monitor settings are set to display codec and resolution, the RGB histogram will not appear. On the left edge of the histogram are shadows or blacks, and the far right shows highlights or whites. When you close or open the lens aperture, the histogram will move to the left or the right accordingly. You can use this to check for clipping in your image. When clipping occurs in the red, green, or blue channel, the respective indicator on the right side of the histogram lights up. If the left and right of your edges of the histogram come to an abrupt stop rather than falling off gradually, you may be losing highlight or shadow details. The record button. In addition to the external record buttons, you can tap the icon located next to the histogram indicator to record. If you're actively recording, then this button, the storage indicator and the time code will all turn red. Beyond that, everything here is pretty standard as far as function is concerned. LUT Applied To Clip. This is not deja vu, and we're not in the Matrix. I did already tell you where to find the LUT indicator that tells you that the LUT has been applied to your whole shot. There is another indicator, though, that tells you if you have a LUT applied to your individual clips. The indicator for this appears to the left of your record icon and will show if you have this feature turned on or not. The storage indicator that you're currently recording to will turn red as well. Dropped frame rate indicator. The Pocket 6K Pro has multiple ways to let you know you're dropping frames during a shoot. The main and most obvious indicator is a flashing exclamation point to the popping up inside of the record icon. The storage indicator will turn red as well. This will happen if the storage you're using may be too slow for the codec and resolution you're working with. To avoid the accumulation of unusable footage, you can set your camera to automatically stop recording if frames are dropped. There will be more on that in the settings section of this walkthrough. Record time remaining. The indicator for record time remaining is visible whether you're using an SD, CFast card, or USB-C flash disk. The remaining record time appears in minute increments and will vary depending on what frame rate and codec you're using. Any adjustments of these settings triggers an auto recalculate. The text and the indicator turns red if you have only 5 minutes of storage left, then starts blinking at the 2-minute warning. If you fill your storage, the word full will appear. If you want to see more detailed information for your storage and formatting, tap the indicator. After that, you will be able to see the amount of free space in TB, GB, or MB, plus the name of the storage, the length of the last clip, your total number of clips, and the file format. You can also format the storage here. While recording the storage, highlighted blue on your touchscreen is the storage you're actively recording onto. The audio meter. At the bottom of the touchscreen on the right is the audio meter indicator. This displays the audio levels in dBFS for 2 channels while using the camera's built-in mic or an external one connected via the 3.5mm jack. Like most audio meters, if you see it fluctuating inside the green area, then your audio is okay. If you end up in the yellow, you need to take a look at some of the settings because you're in danger of getting closer to clipping, but yellow is still fine. If it extends into the red, you're definitely clipping. If you want to adjust the volume controls on either channel or the volume of the audio output coming through your headphone or speaker, tap the indicator and those options will come up in the middle of the screen. And if you want to know more about audio production and the perfect settings for audio, check this video out below. That was actually the second video I ever made on this channel. Touch to focus. Quickly adjusting focus in specific areas of your image is done rather easily on the touchscreen. Touch and hold your finger on the section of the LCD where you need the focus adjusted. Then press the focus button on the camera body to focus your lens on that area. Next is zoom. The 6K Pro gives you two quick options for zooming in via the touchscreen, both with different purposes. These are double tap to zoom and pinch to zoom. Both are pretty self-explanatory names. Double tap zoom will automatically put you into 2x zoom. Slide your fingers around on the zoom in image to show the area you want to focus on. Double tap the screen again to return to normal view. For pinch to zoom, you'll start by doing a double tap to get the initial 2x zoom. From here, pinch the screen as needed to zoom in further. Once again, you can change which area of the image is zoomed in by dragging your finger on the screen. Full screen mode. Needless to say, the touchscreen contains a ton of functions and features and information, but sometimes you require an unhindered view of what you're shooting, and all these indicators can get in the way. To remove the majority of the indicators from the view, simply do a swipe up or swipe down on the screen. If they are active, the only things that will remain are the record indicator, frame guides, grids, focus assist, and zebra. To get out of full screen mode, just swipe again. Playback menu. By tapping the play control button, you can access the playback menu, which gives you the option to control and play previously recorded clips. Once accessed, use the play button on the touchscreen to start playback and pause. You also have forward and reverse buttons that allow you to skip the beginning or the end of the clip, plus a loop button to play the same clip over and over. If you want your playback to go faster in either forward or reverse, hold down the appropriate button on the screen. This puts you into 2x playback, which can go up to 16 times by tapping the same forward and reverse buttons. If you tap these buttons one more time, well, at 16 times, you will automatically get dropped back down to 2x speed. Whichever playback speed you're currently running will be indicated directly under the battery icon. Return to the regular playback by tapping the play button again. To get out of playback altogether and back into standby mode, tap the record button on your touchscreen. All right, thank you guys if you've made it this far. I think we're halfway through the video at this point. I'm hoping, I only have 86 minutes left on this card, so I'm hoping this is getting close to the end. The next section is where all the action is, the settings. This portion of the walkthrough is going to get a bit more technical, but don't get too intimidated. If it seemed like I just kind of glossed over a few pieces of information in the previous section, this is where a bunch of that will get fleshed out. First things first, to access the settings dashboard on the Pocket 6K Pro, press the menu button located on the rear of the camera. This will put you on the dashboard, which is just a simple tabbed menu. The options available are mainly for all the settings and functions that can be easily accessed via the touchscreen. There are going to be 6 different settings options listed left to right across the top of the screen. Those are record, monitor, audio setup, presets, and LUTs. Most of these menu options have multiple pages represented at the bottom of the screen by a series of dots, and all accessible with a simple swipe left or right as needed. Otherwise, you can use the arrows on either side of the screen. Record. Let's talk about the Record tab first. This is where you're going to set your codec, video format, and resolution. Also making guest appearances under this menu option are additional settings such as dynamic range and detail sharpening. These settings are spread out between 3 separate tabs. Record tab 1. Codec and Quality. The codec is the software in your camera that compresses your footage by encoding and decoding your data. The top half of the first screen is where you will choose which codec you want, either Blackmagic RAW or ProRes, and then the appropriate quality options. Blackmagic RAW is the codec developed by Blackmagic Design, which is automatically available in all of their current cameras. And it's a freaking awesome codec. B-RAW comes with 2 different quality options, constant bitrate and constant quality. Constant bitrate gives you a great combination of high quality and predictable file sizes and is an excellent option if your storage options are limited. The sacrifice here is that the quality will drop while filming small, quick moving items such as glitter or leaves. If you're willing to sacrifice consistency with the file sizes in favor of those types of shots being clearer, then constant quality is what you should go with. And the difference between constant bitrate and constant quality is essentially constant bitrate remains constant, and you can adjust it to have higher levels of bitrate, or if constant quality, it varies based on what it's seeing in its exposure or in the focus. And we have a video a full video on how you should select your bitrate and what options to go with in a link below. So be sure to check that video out because it's pretty important to know these. The second codec option, ProRes, functions a bit more differently than Blackmagic RAW. Where BRAW compresses all of your data together, ProRes compresses each frame individually. In ProRes, your bitrate is set, which does not make it less dynamic, but it keeps the quality consistent. I did a more detailed video on the differences between the two of these codecs that you should check out as well. And the difference between also for this section between BRAW and ProRes is that in BRAW, you're able to adjust things like your ISO and white balance and other things in post through the BRAW sidecar settings. And with ProRes, you're not able to. So that's one thing to consider. And honestly, like I've never filmed in ProRes on this camera. But to each his own, and each person has their own thing that they're going for. So moving on. Resolution. The resolution setting works in combination with your codec. For the BMPCC 6K Pro, you can choose between 6K, 6K 2:4:1, 5K 17:9, 4K DCI, 3.7K anamorphic, 2.8K 17:9 HD, and Ultra HD. Those last two are only available if you're using ProRes. Let's move on to record tab number 2, dynamic range. The second record tab is where you find the dynamic range settings. There are 3 different settings to choose from here: film, extended video, and video. In film, you will be shooting using a log curve. Not only does the setting allow for the best dynamic range, but it also augments the information in your footage. This helps you get the most out of your color grading when using programs such as Davinci Resolve. Extended video is the dynamic range middle ground. This is for those of you that have limited time for post-production and is sufficient if you're using standard broadcast monitors. Video is best for when you have 0 post-production time available. This gets you close enough to the Rec. 709 color standard and also records directly to compressed video formats. Sensor area. To the right of the dynamic range is the sensor area. This setting is available when you are shooting below the camera's max resolution, such as Ultra HD. Your 6K Pro can be set to use the full sensor area. For higher frame rates, use the sensor area option to select the sensor area in the window mode. This uses only the amount of the sensor pixels needed for a given video format instead of scaling images from the entire sensor. Project frame rate. When using the project frame rate setting, also found on the second tab, you can choose between frame rates that are more commonly used in TV and film. Make sure that this is set to match your playback speed and audio sync, otherwise you'll have a lot of problems trying to match it up from other things. The available project frame rates are 23.98, 24, 25, 29.97, 30, 50, and 59.94, and 60 frames per second. Off-speed recording, again, nothing fancy here. The off-speed recording option allows you to independently choose your sensor frame rate as opposed to being automatically defaulted to match natural playback speed. So essentially, you set in the last section your project frame rate to, let's say, 24. You set your off-speed recording to 60 frames per second. When you turn on off-speed recording, which is the HFR button on the outside of the camera, or there's other places you can turn it on. When you turn that on, it converts that 60 frame, it films at 60 frames per second, but it converts it back down to 24 frames per second for you. You have to be careful with audio with it, because I've done that a lot of times where I accidentally film in 60 frames per second and have to down convert it. It's a whole mess, but that's essentially what off-speed recording does. Off-speed frame rate. When you have off-speed frame rate toggled on, your sensor frame rate will set how many frames from the sensor get recorded every second, and this will affect how fast or slow your video playback is, and we talked about that. Preferred card for recording. If you're one of those people that like to use both CFast and SD cards for your storage, the preferred card for recording settings allows you to dictate which one your footage saves to first when both are loaded. The last option of the tab 2 dictates how recording proceeds if you're dropping frames. When toggled on, your camera will stop recording when dropped frames are detected. This setting is great for saving time since it will help you not waste resources with unusable footage. Record tab number 3, time-lapse. At the beginning of record tab 3 is where you can toggle time-lapse on and off, and directly to the right of the toggle is where you set your time-lapse intervals in frames, seconds, or minutes. When in use, the time-lapse sequence gets saved as a single clip that matches whatever codec and frame rate you have set up. This helps in post-production since you can just drop your time-lapse clip right into the timeline. Previously, access to this type of effect was limited, but that's not the case anymore. I made a fun video about this for the Pocket 4K a while back, but all the information still applies to the 6K Pro, so go check it out and see how I time-lapse with these cameras. You will find Detail Sharpening right under Timelapse, and its purpose is pretty self-explanatory. This comes with 3 options: default, medium, or high. The best use of this setting is when you have no post-production time available, for example, a live broadcast. Unfortunately, if you're using Blackmagic RAW, you're out of luck since Detail Sharpening only works with ProRes. Record LUT to Clip. Turning on Record LUT to Clip option allows the LUT applied to your recorded footage by default. Turning on Record LUT to Clip option allows the LUT to be applied to your recorded footage by default. It is yet another useful tool to help post-production go smoothly. Apply LUT in File. The last setting under Record is Apply LUT in File, and what this does is embeds your chosen LUT into your file. The LUT gets saved into the header of the file, making it easier to apply to the clip in post-production. Apply LUT in File is only usable with Blackmagic RAW, and this is super nice because whenever you bring your footage into Premiere or into Davinci Resolve, you can go and click Apply LUT that was used on it right there, and you don't even have to load it in. It was already attached to the sidecar. Super easy. Next up is the monitor settings, where you can adjust features such as status text, various overlays, plus a few other cool options spread out over 2 tabs. On the Pocket 6K Pro, you will see 4 menu options: LCD, HDMI, viewfinder, and all. If you do not have a viewfinder attached, then you will see an option labeled both in place of the viewfinder and all. Monitor tab 1. The settings shown in the first tab can all be applied regardless of whether you have an external monitor attached via the HDMI port or are using the LCD touchscreen. No guesswork here, just an easy on-off toggle switch for each setting. Most of these settings are either self-explanatory by the name or were explained in the touchscreen setting of this walkthrough. The first option in the first row is Clean Feed, which is used to remove all overlays, text, and indicators from your view except for your record tally indicator. Next up is Display 3D LUT, which applies to your view of the 3D LUT you currently have active, if any. The last 2 options in this row are Zebra, then Focus Assist. Moving to the second row, you'll find in order from left to right your frame guide, grid, safe area guide, and false color toggles. Moving on to Monitor tab 2, LCD. Status text. The very first setting for your LCD touchscreen is the toggle. To turn your status text on and off, when the toggle is in the off position, your status text and meters will be invisible. You will still be able to see your grids, guides, Focus Assist, and Zebra if these are activated. Display. Next is where you can further customize a couple of your display options. This is where you can switch your view to show your codec and resolution information on screen instead of the histogram and audio meter. Tap on the meter or codec and resolution to switch back and forth. Screen brightness. The last thing here is the slide bar to adjust the screen brightness. Just drag your finger across to choose your screen's brightness, displayed in percentages. Moving on to the HDMI section. Status text. This is literally the same as it is under the LCD, simply toggle on and off to use each setting. Display status for cinematographer or director. Next, under the display status, 2 separate options can be switched based on who is using the monitor, the cinematographer or the director. The cinematographer views keeps the information most useful to the camera operator visible like aperture, white balance, and ISO. The director's view changes the view to information that would mostly be useful to production staff like directors or script supervisors. FPS shows the current frames per second. Cam is what gives you the camera's index set in your camera slate. Operator shows you who the camera operator is based on the metadata in your slate. Duration display shows the timing of the clip you're currently recording or the last clip recorded. Real scene take shows exactly what it says it shows. No more, no less. Dynamic range shows the currently applied LUT. If no LUT is being used, then you'll see the film or video dynamic ranges. Timecode shows the camera's timecode independent of the duration display. Viewfinder. Pocket 6K Pro has the option of attaching an electronic viewfinder available via the Blackmagic design directly, also known as the Pro EVF. It attaches to the top of the camera's body, and the EVF tilts vertically to 70 degrees and comes with 4 eye cup types for the right or left eye. A sensor in the viewfinder detects when it is in use and will switch off the LCD touchscreen to conserve battery power, also preventing accidental taps on your touchscreen while you're using it. You can set the viewfinder to overlay the camera status information or display a clean feed. Under the viewfinder settings, there are multiple settings to adjust. The options for status text, display, and viewfinder brightness are exactly the same as related to the LCD and HDMI settings. There are 2 additional options here as well. Focus chart. To turn on the focus chart, tap on the toggle so it's in the on position. This setting is to help adjust the eyepiece of the viewfinder to suit your vision. With an adjusted range of -4 to +4, you can make this adjustment by manipulating the diopter located directly under the eyepiece. If you're shooting at frames lower than 30p on a display that doesn't run at native frame rate, it's common to see shaking and vibrations in your shots. These are known as jutters. When toggled on, this setting smooths the motion of fast-moving images displayed by the viewfinder. To work appropriately, the shutter angle needs to be set at 180 degrees or less, and the frame rate set at 2398, 24, 25, 2997, or 30p. Both and all, depending on whether or not you have an EFV mounted to your 6K Pro, you're going to see either both and all as the final monitor option setting options. These serve exactly the same purpose. This last option has two independent tabs because while the LCD, HDMI, and viewfinder settings were meant specifically for those individual outputs, the items available in both and all are for settings that apply regardless of which of the three views you're using. All of these settings were covered in the previous section, so feel free to refer back to that as needed for additional information. Frame guides on the left of the middle row is the frame guide setting. This box has two arrows on either side for you to cycle through this settings options. Guide opacity next to the right is the guide opacity setting. The purpose of this one is to choose how opaque the areas outside of the frame guide parameters are. You can set the opacity to 25, 50, 75, or 100%. Focus assist. The next line in focus assist gives you two different settings to choose from, peak and colored lines. Peak sharpens the area of the shot that are in focus on the screen but not on the recorded image, helping you to make sure your focus is dialed in, and will cause the parts of your shot that are focused on to pop out, separating the subject from other elements in the shot. Places lines around the area or subject of the image you're focused on. This serves the same purpose as peak, but can make your manipulations more precise. Focus assist level. Working in conjunction with focus assist level is another self-explanatory one. You get three different options to choose from here: low, medium, and high. Just like a microwave. Focus color. Focus color is used if you have the focus assist set to colored lines, and all this option does is change the color of the lines in focus assist. You can choose between white, red, green, blue, and black. Zebra levels. The last setting on the tab one is zebra levels. It sets the exposure level of the zebra effect. You can set this between 75 and 100% in 5% increments. Grids. The first option under the second tab is grids. Just tap on the thirds, horizon, crosshairs, or dot to set what type of grid overlay you would like to use. Safe area guide. Right under grids is the safe area guide setting. This is used to set the percentage size of your safe area in association with the image frame. Anamorphic desqueeze. The anamorphic desqueeze setting that can only be toggled on and off when using anamorphic lenses. When turned on and recording in 3.7K anamorphic, the BMPCC 6K Pro automatically provides a 2x anamorphic desqueeze. Next is the audio. The audio settings give you the ability to map out your audio channels to different sources, plus make adjustments to smaller items as well. Audio tab 1, channel source. The first setting for both channels will be the channel source, aka which input your audio device is inserted into. Camera left or right is used to choose between the internal microphones. Camera mono creates a single audio channel out of both internal microphones. XLR line records line level audio via the Mini XLR input. XLR mic records microphone level audio via the Mini XLR input. If you're running a mic through this input that has phantom power, make sure the 48-volt switch gets turned off when the microphone is disconnected. 3.5mm left. Line only uses the left channel of the 3.5mm input for the line level audio. 3.5mm right. Line does the same thing but on the right channel. 3.5mm mono. Line does a mono mix as the line level audio on both 3.5mm channels. 3.5mm left. Mic only uses the left channel of the 3.5mm input for microphone level audio. 3.5mm right, mic does the same but on the right channel. 3.5mm mono, mic, as you probably guessed it by now, does a mono mix on both 3.5mm channels. None completely disables that audio channel. Channel 1 and 2 level. This is the next setting that allows you to manage the audio level on each channel. This has the same function as the audio meter that appears on the main level of the touchscreen. Channel 1 and 2 gain. This setting allows you to adjust the record levels on both channels using a slide bar. Audio tab 2. Headphone volume. The first setting on the second tab is the headphone volume. Use the slide bar to adjust the output volume for this device you have plugged into the 3.5mm headphone jack. Next is speaker volume, which is pretty, again, self-explanatory. The speaker volume slide bar is used to adjust the output volume of the 6K Pro's built-in speaker. XLR phantom power. The next toggle is used to turn on XLR phantom power on and off. Make sure that if you're connecting a mic that does have its own power to double check that this setting is turned off before connecting. Having phantom power on in this situation can possibly damage the microphone and your camera. Since the 6K Pro has 2 XLR ports, there will be 2 toggles present. Audio meters. The last setting adjusts how high the peak level on your audio meter goes using 2 different options, -20 dBFS and -18 dBFS. Setup. The Setup tab is where you can manipulate the settings that are not directly linked to recording or monitoring. A lot of what we're looking at here are settings related to software and functions amongst other settings. Setup tab 1, date and time. The first setting is to set your camera's internal calendar to the current year, month, day, and time. This will also assist in setting the time code if there is not an external time code device connected. To adjust this, tap on the image of the pen and edit accordingly. Language. Next is the language setting, which is meant to set the camera to language you're most comfortable with reading and working with. The language setting does pop up when you're doing your camera's initial software setup or after updating software. Despite this, we all have had the situation where devices end up in a language we don't understand, which can be understandably be pretty difficult to fix. Now you know where it is to adjust this. Underneath those is shutter measurement, where you'll choose whether or not you want your shutter speed or shutter angle by tapping on either option. I gave some details on this difference between these earlier in the walkthrough. Flicker-free shutter based on. Next, on to the right, you will set the power frequency you want your camera to use to calculate the flicker-free shutter setting. This is to adjust the visibility or items that flicker, such as candle or stars. There are only 2 options to choose from, 50 Hz and 60 Hz, so make sure you do test shots to figure out which works best for you. Timecode drop frame. The timecode drop frame setting is used when you're using National Television Standard Committee's frame rates of 29.97 and 59.94. Since NTSC frame rates are somewhat different from standard, this will ensure that your project timecode stays correct and synced, even though every second does not contain a whole number of frames. Tap on the toggle to turn this on and off. Display ND filter as. The last setting on tab 1 for the Pocket 6K Pro is where you adjust how the ND filter indicator displays your ND filter setting, with each option corresponding to a different camera convention. While cinematographers will typically use ND number notation, those using DSLRs or broadcast cameras may prefer this information in f-stop format or as a fraction of available light. Setup function button. The second setup tab is where you'll set what you want the 3 function buttons at the top of the camera's body to correspond to. It's basically one big setting with multiple facets. Each of the function buttons has 1, 2, or 3 dots to help you differentiate between them, along with the corresponding F1, F2, and F3 in the setting itself. Tap on which of these you would like to set a function for. After that, to the right, you'll set the behavior that you want the button to have, either a preset function or an on-off toggle. If you want it set as a preset, then using that particular button will recall a particular combination of setting and parameters that you want. Per the example in the manual, if you want function button to use a preset aperture of f8, tap F1, then preset following by tapping the iris setting in the second window. After you would set the parameter, which is the first box in the third row, now you can use the first function button to apply and remove that setting automatically in your shot. If you decide you need one of the buttons to simply turn a function on or off, then you would use the toggle instead of a preset. In this mode, the middle row will be grayed out, and instead you'll use the parameter box to set which function you want the button to have. The last section is where you would set either your function to appear on your LCD or your external monitor attached via the HDMI input. The features that you can use for the toggle settings are off-speed recording, OIS, clean feed, display LUT, frame guides, focus assist, false color, zebra grid, and safe area guide. Setup tab number 3. Setup tab 3, tally light LED. The first setting on the third setup tab is the tally light LED, which changes the color of the tally light found in the upper right of the camera's front panel. Depending on how you're recording, you'll get 3 different color indicators. Yellow is for when you're recording and the footage is going directly to storage media, such as an SD card or solid state drive. Red tells you that you're live, on air, and green is for when you're about to go on air or stand by. This is something that will really only come into play if you're using a Blackmagic A10 Mini. Turn this on and off by tapping the toggle, then adjust how bright you want the LED to be to the right of that. Auto dim display. A new setting now available on the 6K Pro is the option to have the LCD screen dim automatically when idle. Tap the toggle to turn this on or off and set the amount of idle time you want before the screen's dim. This can be set to 1, 5, or 10 minutes. The next time you touch your LCD, the screen will wake up. Hardware and ID software. Starting off the last row of this tab is where your current hardware ID and software type are displayed. The information displayed here is static. The hardware ID is an 8-digit code that identifies your specific Blackmagic camera. It's useful if you have a multi-camera setup because it will help you identify which footage came from which camera when matched to the 32-digit version on your metadata. The software identifier displays which version of the software you're currently running, and I'll be going over software updates later in the walkthrough. Playback. In the next setting, by tapping either a single clip or all clips, you can choose how you want your footage playback to happen. All clips plays back through your media in sequential order, and single clips plays your footage back one clip at a time. Setup tab 4. Bluetooth. Setup tab 4 is where you can connect your Pocket 6K Pro to another Bluetooth-enabled device, such as a smartphone or tablet. This is important because there are multiple mobile apps available that will allow you to control your camera from a remote position. Multiple apps are serving this function for both Apple and Android users, and I have a video explaining the differences in functionality of these apps as it applies to the Pocket 4K, but all that information applies to the 6K Pro as well. And I also have a friend that went to other more in-depth looks at this for another camera channel, and I've linked both of the videos below. I'll run through the steps to connect here as it applies to an iPad. Turn on your camera's Bluetooth on by toggling the setting to be on the on position. On your iPad, open the Blackmagic Control app and select the spot in the list which corresponds to the Pocket 4K. The hardware ID mentioned earlier in this section will be helpful here. If you're connecting for the first time, the app will ask you for a 6-digit code to continue. This code will now be visible in the touchscreen of the camera. Type in the code on your iPad to continue. You will receive a confirmation on your iPad if the connection succeeds or an error message on your camera if it fails. If it fails, just start over at step 1. If you need to disconnect your camera from the currently paired device, then you will just tap the disconnected box to the next of the toggle. And if you want to remove all previously paired devices from the history, tap the third box that says clear all. Setup tab number 5. Factory reset. The first setting option on the setup tab 5 is where you can do a factory reset on your Pocket 6K Pro. To use this, tap on the reset camera settings, then reset on the confirmation page. Before doing this, make sure you have a backup of your settings to a memory card so they are not lost forever. If you want to put those settings back in place after a reset, just import them back into the camera. Doing a factory reset will erase all stored LUTs and presets, plus puts all settings back to their default state. Next is pixel remapping, which will help you get rid of hot pixels, which are pixels that become more visible in your footage due to normal changes in brightness of the pixels over time. To use this, start by putting your camera lens cap on and then tap Remap Pixels. 1 minute later, it's complete. Motion sensor calibration, another one of the self-explanatory titles. To recalibrate your motion sensor, place your camera on a flat, level surface, then tap Calibrate Sensor. This is one of those settings that you cannot save to storage before doing a factory reset. So make sure you go and calibrate this after you reload your settings. LCD, white balance calibration. The last setting in the setup is where you calibrate the white balance for your LCD touchscreen. When you tap on the LCD white balance calibration box, you'll be brought to another screen. Here you will adjust the LCD temperature and LCD tint control so that the two reference patches look neutral. After you change the setting, you can use the reset button to return the controls to the factory calibration. If you want to compare the appearances before and after calibration, tap restore to bring the new settings up. When the LCD shows an accurate white balance, save your settings. Presets. Next on the dashboard are the presets, which are extremely useful if you're someone who uses their Pocket 6K Pro for multiple types of shoots in varying environments, or you're working on multiple filming projects at the same time. What you can include in a preset is just as varied as the number of settings, features, and functions that your camera has. You can have up to 12 presets saved in the camera's internal memory at once. Preset buttons. While in the presets tab, you'll see 6 icons across the bottom of the screen, which are what you'll use to manipulate the settings. From left to right, you'll have an add, which is what you use to create a new preset. Load, which is what you tap on after you choose what preset you want to use from your list. After that is update, which is for saving adjustments that are made to your preset. The last two are the buttons where you can manage your list of presets and delete presets from the memory. Saving and loading presets. Once you set up with Once you're set up with what presets you'll be using for a particular project or environment, you're going to want to make sure that you save them for use later. To save the settings in a brand new preset, tap on the plus sign. This will add it into your saved list. After that step, you'll be provided with a virtual keyboard on the touchscreen to name this preset. After you have your preset named, tap the update icon to save. To recall any of the presets you've saved in order to use them, tap on the name of the preset in the list, then tap the load icon. Importing presets. While the 6K Pro can hold up to 12 individual presets in its onboard memory, lots of cinematographers may be working with way more presets than just one for a project. To import these into your camera, first make sure that the appropriate CFast SD or SSD is connected correctly. Open the preset option and tap the Manage icon. On the next provided screen, you'll tap Import Presets, then Import. On the next confirmation page, when using this function, the camera will only search for the presets folder in your storage media. So if your presets are saved in another folder, better get them moved before starting this operation. Exporting presets. To export your presets to your storage media, tap on the preset you want to export. Then tap the Manage icon. From there, you'll get another screen where you'll tap Export Selected Preset and choose which inserted storage you want that preset to go to. These will automatically go to the aforementioned presets folder. Deleting presets. To not have digital clutter, you're most likely going to have to delete some presets you no longer need. Just select the Preset tab, tap the Delete icon, then tap Delete on the confirmation page. Like I said before, never to be seen again. Introducing 3D LUTs. The purpose of LUTs is to tell your camera what color and luminance output you want for your image to improve the vibrancy of colors that may be appearing drab on playback. LUTs are most useful if you're using film dynamic range for the B-RAW codec, since both of these have undersaturated appearances. The LUT will show you how the colors are going to look after the grading is done. At 1.5 megabytes each, you can save a maximum of 10 different 17 or 33-point 3D LUTs in the BMP 6K Pro's internal memory. Built-in LUTs. Every Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera provides LUTs that are specific to the new Gen 5 color science. Each LUT is specific to that sensor and allows you to preview the different ways the footage can appear. Gen 5 film to extended video displays a wider dynamic range than the film to video LUT and applies a mild contrast change with a smooth roll-off in the highlights. Gen 5 to Rec 2020 hybrid log gamma displays a gamma curve that is suitable for HDR screens and compatible with standard dynamic range screens. Gen 5 film to Rec 2020 PQ gamma displays a gamma curve that is based on what we can perceive with our eyes for efficient coding of HDR images. Gen 5 film to video is similar to the Rec 709 old Rec 709 color standard and has a high level of contrast and saturation. You may find this setting useful when using the Pocket 6K Pro alongside other broadcast cameras using Rec 709. LUT buttons. Just like the preset options, when you're using the LUT settings, you will see control buttons across the bottom of the touchscreen. In order from left to right, you have Load, Media, Manage, and Delete. Importing LUTs. To import LUTs you have saved on your storage media to your camera, you'll start by tapping on the Manage icon. On the next screen, tap Import LUT, and then Import on the confirmation page. Just like with the presets, the camera only searches for the 3D LUT folder in your storage, so once again, make sure what you need is in the right place before starting. Applying a LUT. To apply a LUT currently loaded into your camera, tap on the appropriate selection from your LUTs list. Then tap the load icon. If you want to use the LUT after applying it to all outputs, switch to the monitor option in the dashboard and toggle on Display LUT. Exporting LUTs. To export a LUT for later use to your storage media, just tap on the LUT you want, then the Manage icon. On the next screen, tap Export Selected LUT, then choose which connected storage you want it to be placed on. Deleting LUT. Removing unwanted LUTs is just as easy as removing unwanted presets. Tap the LUT you don't want anymore, followed by the Delete icon. Then tap Delete again when the confirmation page pops up. All done. Embedded 3D LUTs. If you're using a 3D LUT while using Blackmagic RAW, the LUTs get embedded into that BRAW file automatically. The LUT is then saved in the .braw heading file, making it simple to apply to footage during post-production. From there, that LUT is easily accessible for editing. The LUT can then be turned on and off with no problem and will always travel with the appropriate BRAW file. Entering metadata. Entering metadata. If you're unfamiliar with the term metadata, In regards to cinematography, this is the information that is saved within your clip, such as take numbers, camera settings, and various other identifying details. Metadata is the most useful tool at your disposal when you're in post-production and have to process and sort footage. Your Pocket 6K Pro saves timecode, date, time, and camera settings to your clips automatically. Plus, you can use the camera slate for additional details. Slate. Swipe left or right on your touchscreen while in the main view to access the slate. The slate will be divided into 2 tabs, Clip and Project. The information contained in the Clip tab may vary from clip to clip. The Project tab is for information that is static or remains the same between clips. Just like with the different options in the dashboard, Clip and Project metadata have a few different settings to manipulate. Clip metadata. You can update and change the clip metadata in both standby and playback modes. While changing metadata, if you're ready to record in standby mode, the information you change will start applying with the next recorded clip. The good take last clip option applies a good take tag to the most recently recorded clip. While updating metadata in the playback mode, the information is always applied to the current clip being played. Slate 4. The first setting. Slate 4 shows which clip your current metadata is being applied to. You will see either the current clip or next clip displayed whether you're in playback or standby respectively. Lens data. Lens data will display the information for whatever lens you currently have attached, if any. Some information like the lens model and aperture will be automatically provided, but be prepared to manually enter some additional information as necessary. Do this by tapping the pencil icon in the lens data box and filling in where needed. Every area in this view is editable. First is the lens make and model. If you end up needing to manually enter this information, your camera actually has a stored database of lens types. If your lens is in this database, you may see some autofill happening as you're typing. Next is reel. The next piece of information in the clip metadata is the current reel. The 6K Pro will automatically increment the reel numbers for you. If you need to reset back to reel 1, switch to the project tab and tap reset project data. Scene. The scene indicator displays what scene is currently being filmed. This one can be adjusted either by the 2 arrows or by tapping in the box and manually entering the appropriate information. In the upper right hand of the corner of this box, you will see a set of either 2 or 3 letters that correspond to the type of shot you're doing. WS is wide shot, MS is medium shot, MCU is medium close-up, CU is close-up, BCU is big close-up, and ECU is extreme close-up. The current take number is the last box in the middle row. This can also be adjusted with the arrows or by tapping and typing on the touchscreen. You can also add 1 take or 3 descriptors to each take. PU, or pickup, is used if you're reshooting a previous take strictly for additional material after principal photography. VFX stands for Visual Effects and is applied if the shot needs effects added later on. SER, or series, means that multiple takes are within one shot. If you want to tag usable takes for easy recall, then you'll tap on the good take indicator located in the lower left, INT and EXT. After that, you'll see INT and EXT, which are used to tag the shot as either interior or exterior. Just tap on either to apply. Day and night. The last clip setting is for tagging whether the shot is in daytime or nighttime. To set this, tap on either day or night as needed. Number 3, project metadata. The information in project metadata applies the same regardless of whether you're on standby or playback. The metadata contained here affixes to the whole project instead of individual clips. The type of information that you would normally find on a traditional physical slate would appear here. Every setting in this tab is editable using the pencil icon. Project name. Obviously, the name of your project. Director. After the project name is where you would put in the director's name. Camera. To the right of the director's, where you would put the letter you want corresponding to that specific camera, and this is mainly useful in a multi-camera setup. Camera op. The last spot in this view is where you would put the name of the operator of that specific camera. On to the next section. Updating camera software. As with any piece of modern technology with internal operating systems, occasionally your device software needs to be updated. The 6K Pro is no different. There are many ways to go about doing this depending on whether or not you're a PC or Mac user, and some of the steps may already be familiar to you. On Mac, once you have downloaded the Blackmagic Design's camera setup program to your MacBook or iMac, unzip that file. After that, open the disk image to show the Blackmagic camera setup installer. Launch the installer and follow the on-screen instructions. Once the installation is complete, you will want to open the Blackmagic camera folder. This is where you will find the manual, the setup utility, and an installer and document folder that has some README files. On PC, you're going to download the setup utility and unzip the file just like on Mac. The setup folder will contain a PDF manual and the setup installer. Go ahead and double-click that installer and follow the on-screen install instructions. The Blackmagic folder is accessible when opening the Start menu on the Windows. All right, next we're going to be getting into some sections of other content to help you get started or just show you some variations of different things. And this first one, we're going to be getting into rigs, which I will share my rig setup potentially here on this here. But we have VIVA MEDIA Group. We have VIVA MEDIA Group with some others to do it, and I will introduce them for each member. But I appreciate them being on this video manual, video masterclass, whatever you'd like to call it, because I wanted to get different perspectives than just mine so that it can help you depending on which direction you're trying to go with this camera.
Hello, John, and thank you so much for having us. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt.
My name is Connor, and welcome to VIVA MEDIA.
We have had more time and experience with the 6K Pro more than any other camera we have had.
So we're excited to show you our favorite ways we like to rig out our 6K Pros when we're out on commercial shoots.
And first things first, if you're wanting to mimic our builds or just want to know the name or certain part, we use almost exclusively Smallrig parts, and all the parts we use for each build will be displayed on the screen.
Our first build is a classic in-studio build. This build also assumes that the camera is primarily stationary on a tripod and you're able to plug your camera into some wall power. So, first thing we need is obviously the 6K Pro. The number one thing that's going to be crucial in this build is the Smallrig Blackmagic 6K Pro camera cage. There are a few differentiating parts in both builds, but this singular piece is crucial for both builds. So, camera in the cage, there you go, perfect. Next thing we'll do is add the Smallrig magnesium base plate. And I think we already mentioned that we'll display all names of all the parts on screen, as well as some saucy little B-cam footage for all you lovely people on the internets. Screw this in here. One thing we love about Smallrig base plates, or most base plates in general, but it's better when you can get base plates with 2 screws, 2 mounting points, because then your rig isn't flopping around. As with most tripods, you only get 1 mounting point, but on the bottom of the 6K cage, there's tons of mounting points, so you got lots of good, firm. There we go. See like that? Then it won't come out. Nice and, oh yeah, that's not going anywhere. That ain't going anywhere. All right, so we'll take that and put it on. Put it onto our Smallrig magnesium base plate. Lock that puppy up. Boom. There we go. All right. The next thing we'll do, what lens you use is ultimately up to you, but we're going to throw on the Sigma 18-35 f1.8 to get this rig going here. So we'll take this puppy off. We'll slide this puppy on. There we go. Whoop. See, now it's a little heavy. So what do you do when it's a little heavy? You install the Smallrig dovetail plate. Now, ultimately, we're not going to show it here, but this will live on your tripod. So we have a tripod base plate on the bottom of it here. So this is the thing that's going to primarily let you take it off and on the tripod with ease. Of course, you could do that off the base plate, but this is much, much simpler. This also doubles as a way to fine-tune and balance your rig on the tripod. See, so there it is there. But pretend the table's a tripod for a minute. This also allows you to just very simply and smoothly move it back and forth on the dovetail. So that's the point of the dovetail. Quick and easy adjustments and quick off and on the tripod. Plus it also gives us stability when you have it on the table. All right. The next thing we'll put on here, now that we have our forward stability, we will put on the Smallrig Mini matte box. It's also in carbon fiber. Well, actually, I think just the lid is carbon fiber. I'm not sure that this whole thing is carbon fiber, but the lid's carbon fiber, so it's pretty swanky. So first thing you'll need, when you buy the Smallrig Mini matte box, it comes with a bunch of lens adapters for the front of your lens. So you just find out which one up here They got little nice little numbers up there to tell you how many millimeters it is. So you just find the one that fits your lens, and it just slides on like so. Oh, come on now. I tested this. There it goes. The good thing about these lens adapters is that there's still threads on the inside here, so if you need to put ND filters or polarizers or whatever you want, you can still do that. So there. And then of course, also, if you're using a lens that's 95 millimeters across, this can just go straight onto the lens. But if you have a smaller lens, you gotta put this bad boy on there. So it just goes on there like that. Make sure it's nice and straight because of OCD. And, all right. Nope, OCD. Okay, there we go. Now we've got a little sun hood on there. Nice, a little matte box. Woo! Good, that's good. All right, the next thing we will add on here is a top handle. Again, if your camera is stationary, you don't necessarily need it, but when it's on the tripod, and again, you need to make those quick adjustments on the dovetail, or maybe on your ball joint of your tripod, it's way, way easier to loosen up your tripod. Whoop, that's the wrong frickin' side. To loosen up your tripod, grab it by here, and then you can adjust like this. It's much, much easier. Plus, if you take it off the tripod, it's just a good carrying handle, right? So we always ensure that our camera rigs have a top handle on it because it's way more handier than you think. Next thing we'll put on for scratch audio, whether you're recording separate audio on an external recorder or you're recording straight from the camera, like right here we're using a shotgun mic, we always still install a little Rode microphone for scratch audio for reference later in post. So especially on this rig, there's a bunch of cold shoe mounts all over this thing, especially on the top handle and on the cage itself. You can put that anywhere you want. I'll put it on the cold shoe here on the cage. Tighten that puppy down, plug that puppy in. All right, that's already looking like a fancy little rig there. One other piece? No, a couple other pieces. So specifically tailored to the Smallrig cage for the 6K Pro, you can also get another little piece right here that is specific to this cage. So this little piece won't fit on anything else that Smallrig makes. It's specifically made for this cage. But it can mount here, and it can also mount up here. But what it's for is kind of any accessory you want, but we use it for our Smallrig mini follow focus. So we put this little 4-inch carbon fiber rod in there, and then we grab our Smallrig mini follow focus, and then just like so, we put this puppy on here. And then also, if you don't have a lens that's geared, when you buy the mini follow focus, they provide you with this rubber gear thing, so you can just slide this puppy on like so. And then you just take your follow focus, line up the teeth, tighten her down, and then there you go. Now you have a fancy little follow focus to move your lens with. And there you go. It's a simple yet elegant rig. And of course you could build this up a little more with maybe some wireless follow focus systems like the Tilta Nucleus M, or even maybe like some wireless video transmission systems like a Hollyland or a Teradek. But for simple studio work, this is a perfect rig build. And we're gonna pass it off to Matt for the second rig build.
Thank you, Connor. And I will be taking you through our second rig build. And this is for all of you guerrilla style run and gun shooters out there. So to get this thing started, we are going to build and expand on what Connor has built. This rig is going to have a few more pieces, but with mobility in mind. Okay, so let's get this thing started. So building off what Connor has done here, we're going to start by adding in some rods. These are 12-inch carbon fiber rods from Smallrig. Building off what Connor's done, we're going to go ahead and use this Smallrig base plate to add in our carbon fiber rods. Right there. And I'm going to position it like so, and you'll see why in a second. I'm going to put our next one in there. Now, depending on the size of your camera rig or what you're attaching to it, you may need bigger rods. You may need smaller rods. We find that 12 is the ideal length for what we're trying to build out. Next, we are going to want to add some power to this thing. The battery in this camera is improved, but it's still not great. And when you're out shooting all day in the field, you need a power solution that's gonna last the entire day in the field. So we are gonna add on a V-mount battery, the gold standard in the video industry. And to do so, to access that power, we're gonna have to attach a V-mount plate. So let's go ahead and attach that to our rods off of the back here, just like so. We're gonna tighten it down, and that should be pretty good. And then our power source, our battery, our V-mount battery, will just clip in on the back, and that will power our camera. And you'll see that our V-mount battery plate actually has a DTAP port, and that is how we're going to go from V-mount power, gonna plug it in on this side, to the Blackmagic power connector over there, like that. Now, does that mean that you will have a cable dangling off your rig? Yes, it does. Does that mean that your rig will last all day? Yes, it does. So this is a much needed and welcomed addition. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do, especially because we may be shooting outside, is we're gonna add a small sun hood to this screen. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this little Smallrig leather, I think it's leather. Pleather. This Smallrig pleather sun hood. We are going to slide it right in behind here. Now to make some room for the screen, we're gonna pull this back a little bit, tighten that down, and now when we're running and gunning with it, you can pick it up like this, and you can look at your screen and kind of see where you're shooting. You could also add an external monitor to this rig build out. We tend to like keeping things really, really integrated and really tight knit. And the 6K Pro screen is actually really fantastic. So we tend to like to use these whenever we can and avoid adding an external monitor, but you totally can if you would like. Next, we are actually going to take off the dovetail plate because we will not be shooting in the studio with this rig. And we are instead going to be replacing that with handles. Because when you're out in the field, sometimes you're in very interesting, precarious shooting situations. Now, to install this handle the right way, we are going to have to relocate this follow focus to another part of the camera. And luckily, there is one other spot where you can relocate it. So we're going to break out our trusty Smallrig tool. We are going to pull the follow focus off here. We are going to unscrew this little nub. Oh, wrong one. There we go. This little tool I have, by the way, is also a Smallrig special. As you can tell, we absolutely love and adore Smallrig. So I'm going to reinstall this rod mount up here in the top, well, depending on which way you're looking at the camera, the top right of the camera, if you're the operator. There we go. So what will that allow us to do? It will allow us to relocate this rod up here and attach our follow focus right over here, just like so. There we go. Awesome. Now, coming back to our handle attachment, that frees up over here for us to attach the handle like so. The reason why I like attaching the handle inverted is you can do The reason why I like attaching the handle inverted like this is I love pressing a rig up against my body when I'm out running gun shooting. So this really allows me to do that. So this setup allows me to do that without hindering any function of the camera. So we'll go ahead and attach that last handle. There we go. And let's just slightly adjust it forward a little bit. There we go. So you can see you have a nice compact rig that you can shove up against your chest like that. Well, you wouldn't shoot with the mat box down. that you can shove up against your chest like that, and it's a really, really, really nice, stable 3 points of contact. It's really, really great. And I can even reach forward and pull my follow focus. So this is the ultimate one-man run and gun setup. Now, let's say you were one man and a little bit, and let's say you have a client watching or you have a director watching what you're doing. That is where we would put this attachment on and attach this handy thing, which is the Hollyland Mars X wireless transmitter. We'd go like so, twist that on, throw up the little antennas, and you can orient this however you see fit. We'll just leave it forward like that. But it does not interfere with any operation of the camera, just sits at the front. I can hold it like this. I can do my follow focus moves, and that is a very, very fantastic run and gun guerrilla style rig. Of course, when you're shooting run and gun, weight definitely becomes an issue. But we think we found a pretty good balance of weight savings and practicality with this build in its current form.
And there you have it.
Of course, you could also do some mixing and matching of these two builds we showed you, or get crazier still and bust out a camera vest. But with these two builds, we think you'll be able to tackle anything that comes your way using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro.
John, thanks again so much for having us on.
My name is Matt.
My name is Connor. We are Viva Media, and we'll pass it on back to you, John.
You want to see my camera rig?
Who are you?
Smallrig sent me to make sure you don't mess up. You need to do this 6K Pro rig build video now.
Smallrig. I'm sorry. I'm not making another how to build my rig video. I'm not stooping that low.
We have methods to make sure you follow this directive.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not making another rig video.
Do not test us on this.
Literally, there is nothing you can say to make me make a rig video for you.
About $10,000 and a lifetime supply of Monster Ultra Energy. Would that be enough?
Rigs! Everybody's favorite. I'm not going to make you watch this entire video, but if you guys want to check out my awesome small rig build that I made, I figured I wouldn't show it again in this video, as Viva Media Group gave such a comprehensive and awesome view of how to set up small rig setups for this camera. So I thought I would go ahead and just preview this one and send you guys the link. But I also wanted to make sure we, for the sake of inclusion, making sure that we got a Tilta camera rig set up in this. So I invited one of my Discord members who has an awesome setup for this to come share with you his setup. So take it away.
Hey, I heard John is making a video about camera rigs, so I would like to show my setup. This is 6K Pro with a Tilta cage and with Tilta accessories, of course. John asked me why I chose Tilta. It's simply because this small thing, Tilta side focus handle. So 3 years ago, I started studying directing in UCLA Extension, and as soon as the course started, I was lucky enough to get my hands on Pocket 4K, and I was using it without any accessories, any cage whatsoever. So our first assignment was to shoot a small film or a small scene. So I brought something to shoot in Wilshire Square in broad daylight. Because Pocket 4K screen is not bright enough, I couldn't see a thing. I couldn't focus on the actors. The MFT lens's focus ring was quite bad, and also I had only 3 batteries, so I was panicking. So it was a terrible day. So after that day, I realized I need some accessories in order to shoot anything properly. So I made a list. I need a bigger, better battery, and I need to control the focus properly, and I need an external screen that is bright enough to see it properly. So I searched the internet and I saw Tilta focus handle, which uses Sony F970 battery, and also you can control the Tilta, nucleus, and focus motor. So it was a perfect solution. And then I upgraded to 6K Pro. I waited Tilta to announce their take on the 6K Pro cage, and as soon as I see the EVF bracket, I was sold. I placed an order, waited 2 months, and finally I got my cage. But there's a problem. The old side handle used the rail system to connect to the 4K cage, but with 6K Pro cage they changed it, so it doesn't connect it anymore. So Tilta suggested to use a adapter to connect to the side via screw, and it's not safe. And also EVF bracket uses the nutter rail on the side, but if you use the handle, the nutter rail adapter doesn't fit there. Thankfully, they provide an adapter to screw in a nutter rail, small nutter rail attachment, in order to use the EVF bracket. But I think I'm gonna change my setup. I'm gonna get rid of the handle. I'm gonna buy a V-mount battery and use the focus motor via the Tilta's own knob. And that's it. That is my current setup that I use for short films or semi-professional stuff. But recently I find myself using a much smaller setup for everyday shoot. So I carry the camera with me like this, and this works really well. So this is basically 6K Pro viewfinder attached, Tilta cage, Peak Design slide and Peak Design clutch on it. So this works quite good, because 6K Pro's battery lasts for an hour instead of 20 minutes of Pocket 4K. And with the viewfinder I can see clearly and focused. So actually I like this setup even more. And also I have the Peak Design everyday back, the everyday sling, I guess. So I take my 2 lenses and my camera and I'm ready to shoot. So this is my setup.
Well, thanks guys. That was some great rig setups. And next we're going to be getting on to color correction. And my friend decided to come help me with this, as I'm not really, I would consider myself not really a master colorist, and I really wanted to get you guys the best information. So I brought along my friend who does this. So take it away.
Let's talk about color grading your B-raw clips in DaVinci Resolve. So when you open up DaVinci Resolve, you want to come over to the Edit tab there, and there's a number of ways to import your clips. If you're familiar with Adobe Premiere, it's a pretty similar method. You can click Control-I to import your clips. You can come up to File, go over to Import File, Import Media, or you can even just open up the folder where your footage is in, and you can either drag it into this little guy here, into that bin, or you could even drag it straight onto your timeline. Now, you'll notice that Resolve asks you that the clips have a different frame rate than the current project settings. Would you like to change your timeline frame rate and video format to match? And I would click change. Now, if you're working with a mixture of formats, if you have a bunch of different frame rates, you want to take that into consideration. But for this, where I know that the clip that I'm working with, I want my timeline to match that, I'm going to let Resolve just automatically change my timeline to match what that clip already is. So now I have my clip in my timeline, and you'll notice that Resolve didn't change the project resolution. There's a little bit of letterboxing there, which I'm not too worried about. For now, I will scale this clip up just a touch. And if you're familiar with Premiere, Premiere operates in percentages when you deal with scale and things like that. Resolve is a little bit different. If you look, I'm not scaling up to 110%. I'm scaling up to 1.1 to get that image to fit, because I shot this in the full frame image. So there was a little bit of letterboxing there. So now I've got that clip in there, and I can click over to my color panel. If I was going to edit anything, I would do it in this window here, but I'm going to click over to my color panel. And this is where some people get really intimidated with Resolve, but it doesn't have to be intimidating. Spend some time, fool around with it, figure it out. But we're going to dig into now how to color correct your B-raw clips in Resolve. So if you notice, we got our color wheels here, our curves. You've got what's called nodes up here. Not going to dig too deep into nodes. We'll have some resources in the description below for some colorists that I really appreciate learning from. And there's some stuff there where you can learn more about what the different types of nodes are. But for now, just think about nodes kind of like adjustment layers in Premiere. So if you're familiar with that, that's kind of how these nodes are going to operate. So you can come over here to the camera raw panel. And the nice thing about working with DaVinci Resolve and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is that both are put out by Blackmagic. So I've never run into any issues with the camera raw panel, where I have had some issues before with Premiere's Blackmagic Raw plugin. So the one thing you can do here is you come down to decode using project. I'm going to change this to clip. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to edit the metadata of the clip. So I can change my white balance here if I need to. I can change the color space, the gamma, the ISO. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the ISO though, is that because DaVinci works in different systems, where I shot this clip at ISO 400, I can only boost the ISO now up to 1000. If I'd shot at 1250, I could change it to above 1250. But for here, if I needed to change that ISO, which I don't, but if I needed to, I could only boost that up to ISO 1000 in Resolve or Premiere, no matter what program you're working with. So one thing to keep in mind when you're working with raw and log footage is that you want to convert that to a Rec 709 color space before you add any creative LUTs or any sort of crazy color grading. So there's a number of ways to do that. I'm going to change it here in the color space panel there and click Rec 709. And you can look at the image here. Let me get rid of this guy here, make that a little bit bigger for you. I just clicked the clips button there if you're wondering what I did there. And if I go back to Blackmagic Design, that's what it looks like. Back to Rec 709. And now one thing to note is that this actually isn't making any changes on my node. So if I go to copy this node to a different clip, it's not going to actually make that change because it's not in the actual node. It's just doing it to the image itself. So I've got that changed over to Rec 709 now. If I wanted to do this differently, a different way that I could convert it is I could use a conversion LUT. There are some really great free conversion LUTs that convert Blackmagic Raw to Rec 709, or I could come up to this open effects panel, and there's an effect in here called Color Space Transform that I can drag on there, and I can select my color space that I shot with, which was Blackmagic Design Pocket 4K. And then I can click Output Color Space. And again, there's a lot of Resolve that we're not going to get into here, but my timeline is already set to a Rec 709 timeline. So Resolve's already kind of converting that to Rec 709. So you notice I click Output Color Space, Rec 709. It's not actually doing anything different than just use timeline. But if your timeline wasn't set to use a Rec 709 color space, you would want to come in here and do that. So there's a couple different ways that I can do that. I prefer to do it in the camera raw panel, just keep my nodes clean. Not my nose, my nodes. Sorry, I'm a dad jokes. So yeah, convert it to Rec 709, and now we can have some fun. We can come in and mess with the exposure a bit. And again, there's a number of ways that we can do that. So if you come over to the color wheels panel, which is this guy here, I can do that clicking over to the primaries wheels. I can do that through gain, which is primarily going to focus more towards the brights of the image. You'll notice if I bring my lift down, it's really dragging down the blacks of that image, and that got crazy there. But really, I encourage you, when you're working with exposure, use your scopes here. And it's operating pretty similar to how the scopes are going to work on your camera. These are the dark areas of the image here. This is the brightest part of your scopes and part of your image. So as I bring my exposure up, notice what happens on the scopes. The gain is really not touching the bottom part of the image hardly at all. And same with the lift. If I bring the lift down, it's barely affecting the top. Now, if I bring it too far down, it just crushes the whole image. And then gamma is kind of in between there. It's kind of more towards the middle range. And you can see that in the image. So when you're trying to figure out your exposure, look at your image, look at your scopes, see how they're working together. If I come over to shadow, midtone, and highlight on the far right there, that third little guy, if I bring shadow down, now look, that is not touching those highlights at all. So if I want to be a little more particular with affecting the shadows specifically or affecting the highlights specifically, shadow, midtone, highlight is a great way to do that. It's going to have a lot less play on the other part of the image. So, but my preferred method for exposure actually is using my curves. I find that I can just have a little more control than those wheels. So if I come over here and click on this guy here, this is the dark area of my image here in the curves. This is the bright area of the curves. So if I bring this guy all the way up, it makes my image completely white, because what I've done is I've brightened up the darkest areas all the way to white. And if I bring this guy down all the way, it's going to make my image black. And if I bring this over, I'm just going to keep brightening up those bright parts of the image. See what's happening there? And then if I want to crush my blacks, I can drag this over to the right. So I like to have my blacks sitting just a little above 0. I don't want to actually crush them because I don't want to lose that data. And I like to bring my whites up pretty close to the top. Now, it depends on the image that you're color grading, because if you're color grading an image for a short film where it's a nighttime scene in a dark room, you don't really want your whites, your brightest parts of your image, sitting all that high on your scopes. That just wouldn't make sense. So just keep that in mind for the image. This setting in particular, I'm pretty okay with having a balanced exposure. This was a trip that John and I did at a Valley of Fire State Park. And then what you can do on your curves from here is, if you really want to grab like those low mids and darken those up a little bit, you can come in here, grab in that low to middle range of the line. And then this is what's called an S curve. So I brought those low mids down. I'm bringing these higher ends up a little bit. I don't love exactly where those blacks are sitting, so I'm actually going to bring that over just a touch, mess with this a little bit. And again, I'm looking at my scopes, but I'm also just looking at the image and just seeing what looks right to me. That's the fun part of color grading, is that a lot of it is really subjective. So this looks fairly decent. I'm pretty happy with where this is sitting at. This was just after sunset. You can see some of those colors in there. And so I kind of like it looking on the darker side of things instead of completely balanced and as if it was daylight, because that's not true to what the image actually was. So yeah, I feel pretty good with that. Now, if I wanted to, if I didn't want to use my curves, I can reset this using this, and I can adjust my contrast, bring it in there. And a cool feature of Resolve 2 that doesn't exist in Premiere is that it has this thing called pivot. And what pivot is going to do is it's going to affect where your contrast is stretching. So if you think about what contrast is doing when you watch it on the scopes here, if you take a look at these scopes, if I increase my contrast, it's stretching that top and the bottom equally. Now, if I move my pivot, what it's doing is it's moving that middle point of the scope. So if I move it all the way to the right, that middle point, it's affecting more of the dark. So it's making my image darker. So if I bring it all the way to the left, it's going to move that pivot point higher. So it's not going to stretch the top part as much. It's going to bring the lower part of the image, the darker part of the image, up a lot higher. So that's nice when you have something like, if you have, if I get my scopes in here again and I get my exposure the way I want it, I can bring my whites back up again, not too far, something kind of like that. So if I have something like that, and then I make another node, which I can do Alt S to make another node, You know, if I'm really not happy with where these darker parts of the image are, I can add some contrast. But if I don't want to make my brights all that much brighter, I can bring that pivot over to the right there. So that way, if I disable that node with Control D, click it back on, it's not really affecting those highlights all that much. It's not blowing them out by increasing that contrast. It's really just darkening up the darker parts. So that's a handy little feature there. So this is just a quick color correction of your B-RAW clip. Again, there's stuff that you can do in the camera raw panel to change your white balance if you need to. You can even mess around. I'm going to make another note here with just moving your shadows and your lift into those oranges, or if you want to go for that teal and orange, you can drag your lift over, bring your gamma up into that, and that's a colorful way to play around. Your white balance is in here. Your color boost versus your saturation. Your color boost, if you look in Premiere, they have a vibrance little tool there, and color boost is essentially the equivalent to Premiere's vibrance. So this is a quick color correction. Now, how do we go about exporting this? Let me get rid of this node here to get back to that balanced image that we had. Now I'm going to click over to the Deliver tab down here, and exporting really depends on what you're trying to do. So for me, I'm a colorist, and a lot of times my client needs the highest quality image that they can get to put back in their edit. They don't want to have a compressed image that they're then going to export again. So if I'm doing something like that, I'll usually do a custom export, and something like I'm on a PC, I'll use a DN by HR 444 12-bit. Now that's going to be a huge file size, but for what they need, that's going to offer a really high quality, very little compression video file. Now, if you're working on a YouTube video or something like that, the nice thing about Resolve is, again, similar to Premiere, they have YouTube export settings all ready to go. Vimeo. I've even made some of my own custom presets. Now you can also do H.264, and that's my preferred method of exporting videos, whether I'm in Premiere or Resolve, is H.264 when I'm delivering to clients a final video. So you can come in here, you can rename your file. Let's call this John Valley of Fire, and then I can save this to one of my hard drives. And the one thing to keep in mind is that if you had multiple clips in here and you wanted to export it like an actual video, make sure you have single clip selected, because if you click individual clips, it's going to export each one of the clips in your timeline individually, which, unless you're doing something like stock footage, that's not really what you're looking for. Make sure that export audio is on. And again, it's kind of like Premiere. I really don't mess with these export settings all that much. As long as it stays true to my timeline, that's pretty much what I care about. And then I'm going to click, after I have the location, I will click Add to Render Queue. And it's going to make me pick a location. So I'm going to put this in Frame Voyager Color Grading Exports. So once I have that added to the render queue, I can start the render, and Resolve is going to export that to where I told it to. So that's the basics of importing your B-RAW footage into DaVinci Resolve, doing a quick color correction on it, and then exporting your footage. So let's talk about color correction of those B-RAW clips in Adobe Premiere. So you'll notice as we walk through this that a lot of these steps are very similar to Resolve. There are some differences though. For me as a colorist, when I get hired to color grade a piece, I'm always color grading in DaVinci Resolve for that stuff. Now, if I'm just editing something real quick for somebody and they need it real quick for whatever reason, oftentimes I'll do my color correction and color grading in Premiere. They both do very similar things, but I just find that Resolve is a bit more powerful, gives me a little more, well, really a lot more control with the extra tools that it offers. So I can be a lot more finicky, if that's the right word, with the image. I have a lot more control over it. So let's talk about importing clips into Premiere. So we can come up to File, I can click Import. I can use Control I on the keyboard. I can double click here in that bin, bring my clip in that way, or I can come to this bin, and very similarly to Resolve, I don't even have to drag this clip into the project bin. I can drag it into my timeline, and what Premiere will do is it will automatically put that clip in there and it will create a sequence for it, which is right here. And I'm going to rename that to Valley of Fire. And so you'll notice one thing that Premiere did that Resolve didn't do, which is that Premiere, when it made that sequence, it automatically made it the right aspect ratio. Whereas Resolve didn't change the aspect ratio. It letterboxed that image, those black bars on the top and the bottom. So that is the nice thing about Premiere, is that when you bring that clip in, it's automatically going to make that sequence the same frame rate and the same aspect ratio as your clip. So we want to convert this clip to Rec 709 before we do any sort of creative color grading or any creative LUTs or anything like that. And like in Resolve, there's a number of ways that we can do that. So I'm going to click on the source little window here, not this guy here, but source. And now I can edit that metadata there on that clip. I'm going to come down to color space and I can click Rec 709. Wow. You see the big difference there. So when I click on Blackmagic Design, click back to Rec 709, that looks really good. Now, another way that I could do this, it's not as true of a fix, but if you wanted to do this, you could. And I should mention that Blackmagic Raw tab there is a plugin that you can download for free. It does not automatically come with Premiere. So if you're looking for that, you don't see it, that's why. So you need to make sure that you download that plugin. So, but the other way to convert to Rec 709 is using conversion LUTs, and we'll have a link below with some free conversion LUTs. So I'm going to come over to the creative panel here under the Lumetri color window. If you're not seeing that, come up to window here, make sure Lumetri color is checked. And I'm going to scroll down to my conversion LUT that I have here, and U-BMD film-BMPCC V1 is the one we're going to click on. Now, this LUT is, you can see it's a bit different than just converting the metadata. So I do prefer to convert the actual metadata there and not use Lumetri color to convert it. So I'm going to set that back there, Rec 709. We're good to go. And again, like Resolve, you can edit your color temperature here, your tint, your saturation, all kinds of stuff that you can change in there on your clip. But now we have this clip and it's balanced to Rec 709. And just one quick note to why you should do that before you start adding your creative LUTs. So now that I've got this converted to Rec 709, when I throw something like blue ice on there, it's a pretty intense grade. I'm going to bring it back some, bring it down to, I don't know, maybe even, let's see, something. Yeah, we'll bring it up a touch. Somewhere around, let's try 50. So blue ice is on there. It's got this really cold look to it, but you can see my greens are still fairly green. My reds, you can tell that that's red back there. His skin tones look okay. So it still looks fairly true to what the actual image was. Now, if I didn't have this converted to Rec 709, if I click that back to Blackmagic Design, look at how muddy that looks. And that's what a lot of people will do, is they'll throw a creative LUT on top and they're like, why does my image look muddy? Well, it's because you haven't converted that log color space to a Rec 709 color space. So I convert that back to Rec 709 and that looks pretty cool. Now, again, like I mentioned in the Resolve part, use your scopes. Your scopes will not lie to you. They're true scientific data on where your exposures and your color sit. So I still can push the contrast a bit here. I see that there. I'm actually going to reset this, turn off that blue ice look. Now, one thing to note here is that I'm currently in the source window. And so what that means is it's going to edit that clip at its very core, meaning if I grab this clip here and bring it into a different timeline, every instance of that clip is going to have those changes to it. So I don't really need that. I'm just going to edit under the Valley of Fire sequence version of that clip. And I'm not going to get too in deep into that, but so now I have this clip that has been converted to Rec 709, and now we can do some basic contrast exposure kind of stuff to it. Now, this is where it gets to be a little different than Resolve. I can use my wheels down here to pull my shadows, boost my midtones if I want to do that. And this is what I mean about where Premiere doesn't give you as much control as Resolve, is that I'm not really seeing like any numeric value to know where I'm really sitting, whereas Resolve, it shows you those numbers to know how far you've gone. So I'm going to reset that. I can double click on that and double click on that, and it'll reset it. If I want, I can boost my exposure this way. I can do that. I can reset that to 0. I can boost my contrast. So it's kind of pretty similar to Resolve, but again, there's just not as much control. I could bring my blacks down. Now, one thing I've noticed with Premiere when you bring your blacks down is it is very, very quick to crush those blacks. So see, I'm not bringing this down even that far, and I've already crushed those blacks and I'm losing data. Again, my preferred method of getting proper exposure and contrast in my image is using curves. And so I'm gonna grab on this guy here, bring my blacks down, again, sitting just above 0, just above there. And then I'm gonna bring these guys over. Wanna make sure that they're not peaking. See, if I bring that too far, back in those clouds there, that's starting to peak, that's starting to clip, and I'm losing data. So right about there looks pretty good. Again, I'm gonna make another S curve. One thing you wanna look at in this image, so I'm gonna undo that point, is that John's skin tones are pretty dark. And so what happens if I grab too far up in this low end is that I'm actually darkening his skin tones more than I want to. So you notice if I bring that point down and I kind of go more around there, I'm darkening up those darker parts like his coat and stuff like that, but I'm being really protective of his skin tones in there. And so now I can come up and boost those highs a little bit. And that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with where that exposure is sitting at. Again, those blacks aren't clipping. We're not clipping up there. Everything looks pretty good. And again, like we talked about in Resolve, this was shot after sunset. And so I'm not looking to make this super bright. Now, if I want to tweak this, I can come back up here and mess with my contrast if I want to, or, you know, if I want to bring those highlights back even more, I can do that to give it a even more muted look. So I can do that. If I want to mess with my saturation, that's here. I can boost that. I can come into the creative panel here. There's a lot that I can do with sharpening and all that. Again, we're just kind of going over basic color correction, but there's a lot of different tools here. And these panels here are also in Resolve, the hue versus saturation, the hue versus hue, hue versus luma. And there's a lot that I can do there. Like if I want to really bring out those reds in there, I can do that and kind of mess with the saturation of those. There's things that you can do. Like if I wanted to really bring out the blues in here, I can make a point here and a point here, and then grab in the middle there, grab these blues and really bring those up. Or I could, if the blues were too much, I could bring them back. I mean, something like that looks kind of cool too, because it really is muted and kind of helps those reds pop a little more now that I've pulled some of the blue out. So there's a lot that you can do here. Again, I really encourage you, mess around with it. That's where I've learned a lot about color grading, is just learning what the tools do. And then when you ask yourself, oh wait, yeah, if I really want to bring the blues out, how do I do that? Well, because you learned the tool, now you know how to do it. Now for exporting, it's the same that you would do with any normal video in Premiere. So if you're familiar with that, great. If you're not, you can hit Control M, or if you want to, you can come up to File, Export, Media. And I'm typically, when I'm exporting from Premiere, it means that I'm done with the video. And so a lot of times I'm just using the H.264 codec, match source, high bit rate. That works really well for me. Or if I'm uploading it to my Vimeo channel, I'll do Vimeo 1080 or Vimeo 4K. There's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of codecs. If you're looking for exporting like a really high quality color, sometimes clients have wanted me to use QuickTime and then the Apple ProRes formats there. So it depends on what you're trying to do. The YouTube codec works really well for YouTube. The Vimeo one works really well for Vimeo. And then again, if you're looking for something that's far less compressed to export a color graded clip to send to someone to use in their edit, something like that Apple ProRes codec might work well for you. So yeah, I'm going to use H.264. Match source high bitrate, that works great for me. If you've already rendered it out, you can click the use previews there. I'm gonna click on this use maximum render quality, and it's kind enough of Premiere to tell us what that does. It's going to give us better quality scaling, but increases the encode time. So it's going to take a little longer to export. And if I wanted to bring this clip back into Premiere for whatever reason, like let's say I edited the video and then wanted to use that edited video in my project again, I could even click to have it import back into the project. Don't need to do that now because I'm just exporting this one clip, but just going to come down here, click export, and boom, there it goes. If I wanted to, I could click Q and it would send it to Adobe Media Encoder and I could export it that way. But it's pretty straightforward as far as exporting goes. So now we've covered importing footage into Adobe Premiere. We've covered the basics of color correction in Adobe Premiere, and we've covered exporting. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below or reach out to me. I'd be happy to try and walk through those steps and help you figure out color correction and color grading. To me, color grading is super, super fun because you really have a lot of power over the emotion of the image just in what you do with the color. You know, if you make a really cold image, you can make it feel very lonely and desolate. If you make a very warm image, it can bring a lot of joy and happiness to the image. There's just a ton that you can do with color grading and color correction. And so for me, it's a lot of fun.
So obviously we could not fit everything into this video manual masterclass. So for anything that you guys have questions on, please comment below, and we're going to try to make sure that there's links to other things available and links to pieces and gear we talked about throughout this video for you to be able to get access to. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, or join our Discord channel and we can help you answer any questions you might have about it. But I just want to thank other people for joining in on this. It was great to have everyone here. It was great to do another one of these. And I really hope that this video helps you out a lot. And be sure again to subscribe to the channel. And by you watching more of our content, it helps us to be able to do more of these videos consistently. So hope you enjoyed this. Let us know if you have any questions. But until next time, this is John Owens with Frame Voyager. And I'm going to go gargle salt now because my throat is completely gone. We'll see you in the next video manual, guys.